Hello, puppies and kittens. Welcome to another episode of Blasphemers Bible with the usual crew. Anybody have any opening announcements? No? Okay.
Well, just a toast to your military choir. Did you see? The governor's ball. I love that the Canadian am telling you about things going on in America. But at the governor's ball with Trump and the governors, I guess I don't know if it's the Army choir or they came in and did a choral performance of "Do You Hear the People Sing" from Les Mis. Now, Isaac knows what I'm talking about.
Les Mis, that's funny.
It's literally the Revolutionaries song in Les Mis. And they had a couple of guys apparently at Trump's table throwing in little inserts from the end of Master of the House, how you should take a touch from anyone you can while they're fleeing in chaos and, grab a bit of this and that because most of them are goners. So that was a very nice bit of artistic resistance.
Okay. Sorry I missed it. All right.
Video.
Yeah. So we're running Dual Kings the 13th.
Exactly.
Yeah, that works.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Who's going to be reading today?
Who hasn't read? I mean, I haven't read, but like.
But if you read and do the comments, it'll just be the.
That's just like overplay on my part.
I haven't taken a turn in a while. I can do that.
Very good. Thanks.
I was looking for a die, so to do it that way, but I guess I lost it. What a bummer. Okay.
How do you not have die here? All right.
Yeah. You can finish the chapter. Actually, it's 25 verses.
Jehoahaz, king of Israel. All right. In the 23rd year of Joash, son of Ahaziah, king of Judah, Jehoahaz, son of Jehu, became king of Israel in Samaria. He reigned 17 years. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord by following the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, which he had caused Israel to commit, and he did not turn away from them. So the Lord's anger burned against Israel. And for a long time, he kept them under the power of Hazael, king of Aram, and Ben-Hadad, his son. Then Jehoahaz. Then Jehoahaz, sought the Lord's favor, and the Lord listened to him. And he saw how severely the king of Aram was oppressing Israel. The Lord provided a deliverer for Israel, and they escaped from the power of Aram. So the Israelites lived in their own homes as they had before, but they did not turn away from the sins of the house of Jeroboam, which he had caused Israel to commit. They continued in them. Also, the Asherah pole remained standing in Samaria. Nothing had been left of the army of Jehoahaz except 50 horsemen, 10 chariots, and 10,000 foot soldiers. For the king of Aram had destroyed the rest and made them like dust at threshing time. As for the other events of the reign of Jehoahaz and all he did in his achievements, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Israel? Jehoahaz rested with his fathers and was buried in Samaria, and Joash, his son, succeeded him as king. In the 37th year of Joash, king of Judah, Jehoash, his son, succeeded him as king. In the 37th year of Joash, king of Judah, Jehoash, son of Jehoahaz, became king of Israel in Samaria. Shush, Tomer. Come after you.
Good.
And he reigned, I will do them in American accents if you don't stop it.
Okay.
And he reigned 16 years. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord and did not turn away from any of the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, which he had caused Israel to commit. he continued them. As for the other events of the reign of Jehoash and all that he did in his achievements, including his war against Amaziah, king of Judah, are they not written in the annals of the kings of Israel? Jehoash rested with his fathers, and Jeroboam succeeded him on the throne. Jehoash was buried in Samaria with the kings of Israel. Now Elisha was suffering from the illness from which he died. Jehoash, king of Israel, went down to see him and wept over him. My father, he cried, the chariots and horsemen of Israel. And Elisha said, get a bow and some arrows. And so he did. Take the bow in your hands, he said to the king of Israel. When he had taken it, Elisha put his hands on the king's hands. Open the east window, he said. And he opened it. Shoot, Elisha said, and he shot. The Lord's arrow of victory, the arrow of victory over Aram, Elisha declared. You will completely destroy the Arameans at Afek. Then he said, take the arrows, and the king took them. Elisha told him, strike the ground. He struck it 3 times and stopped. And the man of God was angry with him and said, you should have struck the ground 5 or 6 times. Then you would have completely defeated Aram and completely destroyed it. But now you will defeat it only 3 times. Elisha died and was buried. Now Moabite raiders used to enter the country every spring. Once, while some Israelites were trying to bury a man, suddenly they saw a band of raiders, and so they threw the man's body into Elisha's tomb. When the body touched Elisha's bones, the man came to life and stood up on his feet. Hazael, king of Aram, oppressed Israel throughout the reign of Jehoahaz. But the Lord was gracious to them and had compassion and showed concern for them because of his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. To this day, he has been unwilling to destroy them or banish them from his presence. Hazael, king of Aram, died, and Ben-Hadad, his son, succeeded him as king. Then Jehoash, son of Jehoahaz, recaptured from Ben-Hadad, son of Hazael, the towns he had taken in battle from his father, Jehoahaz. 3 times Jehoash defeated him, and so he recovered the Israelite towns.
This is a very slightly confusing bipolar God narrative here.
Yeah.
There's a bit of time skipping backwards and forwards as well, which is
that
and the name changing.
Exactly, and not just the name changing; it's just interchangeable. So this is what makes it even more complicated. So Yehoash and Yoash were variants of the same name, and this is what the SBL Study Bible says in this. The variants of the same name and used interchangeably throughout the narrative. Yehoash/Yoash of Israel should not be confused with his contemporary Yehoash/Yoash of Judah. Yehoash of Israel reigned from 802 to 786 BC. So it does get kind of confusing with the names because we're talking, because there are 2 kings at the same time with the same names.
And we also have the time skip, so we have Joash died and was buried, and his son becomes king, and then we have the story of Elisha dying, which happened during the reign of Joash. So it's like you have to go back in time.
Yeah, it's very time skippy, but also the list, it's so interesting because it's said of every Israelite king, they did evil in the sight of the Lord and continued the blah, 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 blah. Because they continued the worship practices that had literally always been going on.
Yeah.
It's just it's an annoying retcon to try and delegitimize the actual traditional religion of Israel and to try and say it was this horrible perversion and that they just kept up, and that's the only evil they're said to have done.
Oh, that's the big thing, right?
Yeah.
And when it comes to like the reason why God would save Israel at that point was like, okay, so in verse 4 it says, but Jehoahaz entreated the Lord, and the Lord heeded him, for he saw the oppression of Israel. So it's as if he felt bad for them. But Then he he says like, oh look, he was like evil all these years because he continued in the sins of Jeroboam, and then he goes on to say that it was like that he just barely got the victory because Jehoahaz was left with like not that much of an army, but he still won. And where was it? And then even after that again, the you had to have the restatement of the claim that he also did what was evil in the sight of the Lord in verse 11. And God, where was it? And there's this like weird, I'm not sure what to call it. I guess in a way it's divination, but they seem to have some sort of control over it depending on the amount of times that you hit it. The arrow,
I mean,
or the ground.
Yeah. In my instinct says, given the amount of prophecies that are retconned or adapted after the fact, that this is a case of trying to blame later defeats on the failure of the king to behave appropriately in prophecy, because 3 is the number of completion. If he was told to strike the ground with no other instructions, 3 would be a symbolically appropriate number of times to hit it. 7 would have also, but then I don't know, maybe you'd break the arrows. Depends on the arrows. But
the thing is, in this case, it doesn't represent completeness.
No, it doesn't. I'm saying, like, from his perspective, if he's picking a number out of his ass. But here it doesn't represent completeness. Again, it goes against it. But it very much seems as though, oh, we have the prophecy of Elisha. We shall do this, and you hype up the troops, and then you do win 3 battles, but then you stop winning. And then, oh, well, it's because I only hit the ground 3 times.
I mean, I could see that as as kind of the internal logic for the story, but still, it's it gets even weirder, right? Because then, with considering what we read in verse 4, there's also the copium of verse 23, but the Lord was gracious to them and had compassion on them. Like that's not like like that is it's
he let
such
them win a few battles.
a fucked up God, what's the word I'm looking for? This God sucks is what I'm saying.
He does indeed.
He gives the reason of like, well, since you asked so nicely, and now he's like, well, I felt really bad for them. Like, bull fucking shit. No, you didn't. You weren't trying to keep the covenant that you made. It's this is. There is clearly a lot of there are layers to this chapter. Textual
there are layers, but they're all about how much God fails his job. I mean, Yahweh was a war god. Winning wars was literally his job, and he fucking sucks at it.
No, he's good at it, but he's only kind of a little bit helping sometimes.
Right. Of course, it's not incompetence. It's just that he doesn't wanna.
I mean, it seems like verses 4 through 6 are not like in the right order. It seems like verse 7 is like a direct continuation of verse 3, and probably 4 through 6 like belong after verse 11. Afterwards, I think that's at least what McKenzie proposed. I don't know what the others suggest.
That would make a lot more sense.
I mean, Rashi has this idea that it wasn't appropriate to say they sinned, and then bring straight up that Elisha was sick, because you shouldn't associate. It would say that Elisha was sick and dying because the king was sinning or something like that. So they split it up.
It's not stated.
I mean the death of Elisha, because with the whole Elisha cycle, Like you could totally see like, you know, them having, you know, multiple sources and going, well, you know, let's stick the death of Elisha here, and kind of change it to the narrative that ends in verse 25, where they have, you know, 3 times Joash defeated him. And you know, they also need to still in that story have the propping up of Elisha, so even when he is dead, apparently his bones can bring people back to life, or his body can.
That's just like another miracle story to show.
What kind of necromancer are you if you raise people after you yourself are dead? I didn't think that was part of necromancer lore, but that's the only word I can
he's got to be holy, right? It's because he's holy. But at the same time, think about the perspective of the guy that came back to life. He comes back to life when someone is invading. So he gets up maybe gets out of the grave, and he's like, wow, I can't believe I'm alive. Turns around and sees this marauding band.
Yeah, I mean, I think some take it like as an independent story outside of the whole stuff. I mean, even in the Masoretic text, the story is like in a petucha, is enclosed with 2 like pauses. I think Cogan calls it like a footnote, which locks and like circles around the whole cycle of the stories of Elisha. It's like it seems like it's just an amalgamation of stories that were edited together.
Yeah, it definitely seems like an insert. It doesn't have like, you know, Joash defeated them 3 times, fulfilling the words of Elisha or anything like that. And also at the beginning of the chapter, we have, you know, God sends them a savior. And obviously the idea is you're supposed to just read that part and then get Joash or Yehoash, is able to defeat them a few times. Yeah. Like the addition of Elisha prophecy is not needed.
It should be noted that in the story of the resurrection, the miracle is not attributed to Yahweh. It is attributed to the bones of Elisha.
Right.
So
but he did get a double portion of the spirit magic that Elijah had. So obviously it like soaked into his bones. So it's sort of, I mean, it's magic has interesting transitive properties, but
yeah. I mean, yeah, he has double portion of Elisha, right?
Mm-hmm. The magic is strong with this one.
I guess you could say that.
Would this be considered a spell with this ritual of stamping the ground or pounding the ground or whatever?
It's more ritual, like a ritual. I'm trying to think of the word.
But there's
symbolic prophecy, not necessarily a spell, if that makes sense.
Well, but there is a connection.
I mean,
between the
Fritz
actions and the effect.
Yeah,
Fritz calls it symbolic action.
But if performing the symbolic action is supposed to cause the thing to happen, then how is that not a spell?
It is.
Because it's indirect, maybe. It's like, you know, it's like if you pray to God, God will do a miracle.
If you say that you tell somebody that they're going to be victorious in battle, that's in this book, that's a blessing. Right? That just saying that is an enchantment that grants them the ability to do it, and telling them that they're going to die is a curse because you just said the thing and now it becomes true. So that those are spells.
Just because it's from the prophet.
If you beat on the ground 5 times, you'll win 5 times. If you beat on the ground 3 times, you'll win 3 times. That's same logic.
I guess we're getting a bit nerdy about spells here.
It's
a bit like if you summon something and then that is magical creature and it does something, like it's not you didn't cast a spell, the creature did. So
we'd have to argue over like the definitions of like spells and incantations and rituals
right.
I noticed in this there's a real misunderstanding as to the nature of cause and effect, because the prophet is supposedly the one who will tell you what will happen, but then people don't seem to understand whether he's predicting it or causing it. And they seem to get it confused. Now, granted, with something like battle, if the soldiers believe your prophet that you will be victorious, that might actually legitimately help them be victorious, because valor in battle is a thing. And that, has, a rousing speech has turned the tide of many a battle. It's not obviously all powerful, but it does have an effect. But at the same time, I could totally see, particularly in an ignorant and superstitious culture, anyone who had even insight and said, this and that is going to happen. Not because they wanted it to happen or were making it happen, but because they could simply see how things were going. Oh, well, you said it, so you made it happen. And, then it's witchcraft.
You jinx yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. As opposed to just, I watched how the court was going, and that guy was obviously going to stab that guy. Like, it's not even.
Well, somehow these people think that there's a spell if you eat cottage cheese and the neighbor's cow gets sick, well, then somehow you did that.
It's like pigeons.
Just to be clear, as a Russian, I've eaten a lot of cottage cheese in my life, and a lot of neighbors' cows have gotten sick.
I mean, as an Israeli, I've eaten a lot of cottage cheese, and I haven't gotten sick.
Are you a cow?
No, because because we know how to make cottage cheese.
Okay, so we got a comment from Matt White. Says, Aaron, am I right in translating, is it not written in the annals, into, look, we've got real kings named here, so the rest of what we wrote is real too, see?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, it does serve as a way to justify, but the thing is, because of all the different things that are like cited, because there are so many different books, many of which are lost, I lean towards these, at least the actual text being real, but it does serve to my thoughts are it would be taking like perhaps a real king's list and then making like this whole, like adding a whole bunch of mythology to it.
Yeah.
And it probably already had a little bit in it, but
yeah.
Well, and the narratives around Elijah and Elisha, that cycle, I mean, this is just, when it's written down, it's the formalization of a cycle that has already been legendary and passing around, and you're just working sort of the myths into your story as you need them. It's probably as accurate as the Disney Hercules.
Then we have a comment from Sailman for $1.99. It says, why is everybody so, Aaron says, why is everybody so, and then Lalandra says, stupid.
It sounds like a quote, but I'm like, which show was that from? I must have missed it.
Yeah. And then El Mundo the Great offers £2 and says, take my money, Aaron. Thanks. Thank you sincerely.
Okay, so I'll start with verse 1. Several commentators note a problem with Jehoahaz's 17-year reign, beginning in the 23rd year of Joash. As Sweeney writes, quote, since 1036 states that Yehu ruled for 28 years, and 12:1 states that Joash ben Achaziah began his 40-year reign in the 7th year of Yehu, Joash ben Achaziah would have ruled only for 19 years after the death of Jehu, end quote. Cogan notes that some, like Tadmor, have suggested that the number 17 includes the 3 years, or 2 according to Galil, which Jehoahaz was the regent during Yehu's time, during Yehu's reign, during which. Others, like Thiel, suggest that this was a change in the counting method of years in the Kingdom of Israel. McKenzie writes that while both options are theoretically possible, there is no compelling support for either. He suggested that the figure for Joash's 23rd year is an error. Josephus, in Antiquities 9:173, wrote that Jehoahaz ruled in the 21st year of Joash.
I see.
On verse 3, Ben-Hadad. This is the third Ben-Hadad mentioned. Fritz notes that this Ben-Hadad is mentioned in the inscription of King Zaku of Hamat, and he is probably identical with the Mari of the inscriptions of Adad Nirari III, who ruled from 801 through 783, since the Assyrian sources mistake the address Mari, my master, as a royal name.
Isn't Ben son of?
Yes.
So we've had 3 kings named son of Hadad.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we also
there would
have
have been multiple, right? Because Hadad would have.
Yeah,
also
we also
been
we
God,
also
and
have-
do have, and we have archaeological evidence of these kings of Aram.
No. I'm not
and also-
suggesting they didn't exist.
I mean, we
Yeah,
also have
yes,
another
yes.
Jeroboam
But they-
here, so.
But their names do change. Their names are maybe we know that they're trying to talk about the specific king of Aram, but sometimes the Bible calls him like the wrong name or something. So it's like,
Yeah.
it's possible that it's Ben Hadad or Bar Hadad, and then I think also he's called something else somewhere else. I can't remember what it's called.
Oh God, the Bible is bad historical fiction.
Yeah. Ben Hadad II is also called Hadad Ezra.
I promise you, the historical fiction gets even worse.
Once
we start Chronicles.
Believe you.
Yeah.
I do believe you.
I can't wait for Chronicles.
Fuck.
Yes.
Okay.
It's also
I propose for Chronicles, Aaron reads the first 9 chapters. I promise, Aaron, it's very easy.
Is it a list of names? Because the list of
it is a genealogy.
Yeah.
I'll definitely help with that. It's also interesting that the kings of Israel are mentioned in archaeology quite a bit. And even though they have quite a more, according to the Bible anyway, they have quite a violent succession. Like I think this is our first time in this, during this time that we're reading about this, the first time we actually get like a 3rd generation of the same family of kings, with Yehu's grandson. And then I think with the kings of Judah, like the first one that is mentioned in archaeology, we haven't even got to him yet, which is going to be like the grandson of the guy now, or even great grandson. Uzziah? It's like, I think he is he's the son of Amaziah, the son of Jehoash, son of Ahaziah. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, on verse 5, a deliverer. In Hebrew, Moshiach. The exact identity of this deliverer or savior is unclear. Traditionals identify him with Jehoash, son of Jehoahaz, since verse 19 states that he struck Aram 3 times. Likewise, Sweeney writes that Jehoash ultimately defeats the Arameans and restores peace to Israel, thereby paving the way for the reign of his son, Jeroboam. McKenzie notes 6 more identifications for this savior. Quote, second is Jehoahaz, assuming that the success against Aram and Ben-Hadad began during his reign, according to Miller and Hayes. Jeroboam II is third, based especially on the statement in 1427 that Yahweh saved them through the agency of Jeroboam, according to Kittel, Montgomery and Geman, Shanda, etc. A 4th candidate is Elisha, whose name incorporates the Yesha root and who endows Jehoash with victories, according to Gray and Hobbes. Still, a 5th proposal is the Assyrian Adad Nirari III, because the Assyrian assault on Damascus occupied Hazael's attention and distracted him from his oppression of Israel, thereby relieving the pressure on them, according to Cogan, Haran, Benjamin Mazar, and Weizmann. 6th, Zaku of Hamath has been nominated because he resisted a coalition of kings led by Ben-Hadad, and in so doing probably relieved Aramean pressure on Israel, at least temporarily, according to S.A. Cook. Finally, the anonymity of the deliverer has drawn the attention of some scholars away from any specific human individual and highlighted Yahweh's role as Israel's deliverer, according to Hens-Piazza, Ole, and Wuthwein. End quote. McKenzie follows the last suggestion, favoring the Septuagint reading victory, deliverance, salvation. He writes that this reading, quote, obviates speculation about the identity of the figure here and supports the understanding of Yahweh as the source of Israel's victories. It also accords well with the use of the root Yesha in association with various candidates, end quote. on verse 7.
Just a quick second. Yeah, Peter, that person is a troll. I don't know how people might not have noticed their earlier comments, but they're just trolling and pretending to be an ally or whatever the word is.
They're in timeout. Next one is a ban.
Yeah, they made some comments earlier that made it obvious that they were trolling.
Yeah.
Or at least didn't know the subject as much as someone.
So far as I
knows
can
our
tell,
language.
the topic today does not involve trans issues at all. So I think any more mention of that should get a removal.
Yeah, I mean, I don't read the chat, so
That's what I just wrote in chat. So I'll keep an eye out.
Okay.
Good. Thanks.
Okay, so on verse 7, Fritz comments, the addition of verse 7 confirms with numbers how weak the northern kingdom had become. Nothing can be said about either the origin or the accuracy of those figures. Compared to the 2,000 chariots and 10,000 men commanded by Achab in the Battle of Kalkar against Shalmaneser III in 853, the reduced size of the chariot regiment is noticeable, while the number of footmen remains equal. Even if there is no way to check those figures, it seems that the fighting power of the Israelite army was seriously diminished by the decrease in chariots. The remaining 10 chariots are, next to the 50 horsemen, only of symbolic value. No field battle could have been won with such a small contingent. Although no more particulars about the conflict with Aram are given, the period of Jehoahaz's reign is characterized as one of the weakest of Israel, that is improved only with the victories of Jehoahaz's successor in 1325.
That's interesting. I mean, obviously, they took a major hit to their cavalry, and chariots were a big deal at that time in terms of warfare technology. But, yeah.
So I got something in the mail. I got this thing. What is the key to the happy family life? And little. This was in a handwritten envelope.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I got this thing telling me happy are the people who believe in the Bible. And all that crap from the JW Foundation.
I figured. I was about to say handwritten letter, Jehovah's Witnesses. They're probably, because their religion, they're not required to go door to door anymore. They can stand by a cart in public, and the little old ladies can sit home and write letters, and that way they can count their time so that they don't die in Armageddon.
I'll be honest. I kind of miss them going door to door. I enjoyed our conversations.
Do you see how this is all? It appears to be handwritten. This could be a very clever photocopy, but I can kind of.
No, that's someone who's too old to comfortably stand by a cart for 5 hours in the sun. So they're doing their service by doing these handwritten letters.
Yeah. I mean, one of the reasons,
one
of the main reasons that they do proselytizing is to enforce in-group, out-group thinking, because every time they get rejected or people close the door in their face, it makes them think that, people outside of the cult are evil and stuff like that. So it's effective, even if they don't
fantasize about stealing their stuff after Armageddon when they all get.
Well, a couple years back when they had their little placards outside of American Atheist National Convention in Phoenix, I'm sure I made a very pleasant impression on them.
I have no doubt. Oh God, I do feel bad for them though. It's a horrible cult. It makes people abandon their children and let them die without blood transfusions, and it's got so many horrible elements. The people in it, they're nice and seem very surface level happy, but in a we're not allowed to be unhappy kind of a way. It's very Stepford vibes.
That's good that you did that awful thing, Anthony. That's real good.
We're very happy. This is my happy face.
You better not be thinking bad things about me. All right, are we ready to move on, or
I think we're ready to continue our commentary.
Yeah, I guess. I have more. So on verse 10, the 37th year of Joash, king of Judah. Traditionalists have already noted a problem with this reading, as Rashi explains, quote, "This verse is contradicted from two sides, and I have not found a reconciliation. For it should have said 39th year, because his father ascended to the throne in the 23rd year of Joash's reign, and reigned 17 years. Consequently, he died in the 39th year of Joash's reign. Also, it is stated below in this section, in the second year of Joash, son of Joachaz, king of Israel, Amaziah, son of Joash, became king in 14:1, the king of Judah. Consequently, Joash, son of Joachaz, ascended to the throne in the 40th year of Joash, which was his last year, and in the second year of Joash, son of Joachaz, Amaziah became king. And even if you say that Amaziah became king in the year of his father's death, and scripture calls this the second year of Joash's reign, nonetheless, you can deduce that Joash, the king of Israel, did not become king until the 39th year of Joash, the king of Yehudah, or Judah, end quote. And Cogan notes that Cogan notes that in several Septuagint manuscripts, Joash's reign lasted for 39 years, and in one manuscript for 40 years.
6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the numbers can be wrong quite often.
Yeah, they are.
Honestly, 1 year is pretty tame for the numbers being wrong. We've seen them wrong by a lot more.
But,
yeah.
1 or 2. Yeah. But it's interesting to see Rashi being completely not able to find a solution.
Yeah. He sometimes have like, I have no idea what this means, or I don't know how to solve this. So at least he's
that's
honest
like more translation, right? Yeah, he's honest. Like,
yeah,
because he's very into like, if there's a word that's rare and we don't, he will like try and translate. He'll try and explain what it means, and because he lived in what is it, Provence, whatever, like in the 800s, right?
No,
I think he was just trying to translate it to fill whatever gap needed to be filled.
And he would use like the French of the time to translate the words and be like, this is probably what this is talking about, and then he uses like a French word to be like explain it, which is very helpful also for if you're studying like old French from the 12th century. Rashi's pretty good source as well.
Yeah. Because he
writes it in Hebrew letters, so you can kind of get the pronunciation out of it as well. So
yeah.
No, I appreciate what you're saying. I just don't think he was writing it with the intention to preserve the French of his time.
No.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so on 12 through 13, these verses appear almost verbatim in 14, 15, and 16. 14 verses 15 and 16. And in the Lucianic Recension, they appear as a plus in verse 25. Fritz writes that the concluding formula for Joash is put too early, since verses 22 through 25 goes on to mention his victories against the Arameans. He takes it to be the work of a redactor. Likewise, McKenzie writes that these verses are secondary, based on their absence from the Lucianic Recension, the fact that it immediately follows Joash's opening formula without any other information about his reign in between, and the intrusive reference to Jeroboam sitting on the throne in verse 13. He writes, quote, "Despite its intrusiveness, this reference helps to explain the occurrence of the formula here. It recalls Yahweh's promise that Yehu's descendants would sit on the throne for 4 generations in 1030, which is appropriate since Jeroboam II was the next to last. His son Zechariah would reign only 6 months, and most powerful of the Yehu line." On verse 14, my father, the chariots and horsemen of Israel. This is what Elisha said when Elijah ascended to the heavens, according to 2:12. Sweeney writes that my father expresses respect for a master, and the chariotry of Israel and its horses acknowledges Elisha's importance as a defender of Israel. He also notes that elsewhere, Elisha is accompanied by a divine army of chariots and horses that fights against Israel's enemies, as I've seen 6:8 through 23. Hens-Piazza writes...
Which I also have a video on, by the way.
Yeah. Hens-Piazza writes that the cry, quote, not only echoes Elisha's exclamation when Elijah was about to leave him, but also testifies to the loss and reverence with which he now regards Elisha. it resounds as a conventional expression of the king's desperation and fear at facing the future without the power and presence of the one departing. End quote. On verse 16, Elisha put his hands on the king's hands. Gersonides writes, quote, to inform that Elisha's hands will be with Joash's in his wars by way of wonders and divine providence given by the prophet. End quote. Cogan writes that Elisha putting his hands on Jehoash's hands intends to encourage the act and fulfill it by passing the prophet's powers to the king. McKenzie notes that the meaning of this symbolic act is paralleled by an Egyptian relief, in which Seth supports Thutmose III with a drawn bow.
That's interesting.
On verse 17, Fritz writes that the symbolic action is to represent the victory over the Arameans, indicating the enemy by pointing the arrow toward the east. He notes that Afek is already mentioned as a site of battle with the Arameans in 1 Kings 20 verses 26, 27, 29 through 34, and 43. Thus, it is possible that the name has been taken from the tradition. And Sweeney comments, quote, although many consider symbolic actions to be a form of magic, according to J. Forer, they are better understood as ritual drama that symbolizes and ensures the desired result. By shooting an arrow out the eastern window of the house where Elisha resides, Joash dramatizes the arrows that he will shoot against Aram and effectively makes his shot an arrow of victory, quote-unquote, over Aram. Some note that Afek, where Elisha tells him that he will achieve his victory, lies not to the east where he shoots the arrow, but to the west in the coastal plain, where the Wadi Shiloh provides access to the Israelite hill country. Afek is a strategic site where the Philistines struck at Israel in order to ensure their control of the coastal plain and the Israelite hill country, as we see in 1 Samuel 4. There is another site called Afek in the Transjordan, some 3 miles east of the Sea of Galilee, where Achab defeated Ben-Hadad in 1 Kings 20, 26 through 30. Because this site lies on the east of Israel and sits astride the strategic passage from Aram into the Jezreel Valley, this site is more likely the one in question. End quote.
Interesting. Yeah, I thought it was maybe the general direction of Aram. I mean, Damascus would have been northeast, but I imagine they weren't very good at directions back then. So.
I've got a comment from Mr. E. I love that name. Says, have any of the panel read The Seer of Patmos? I recently picked up a copy.
No, that sounds interesting, though. I assume it's about the author of Revelation.
Apparently, it's an Adventist book.
Oh, yeah. That's an unfortunate group.
They're
actually
Haskell.
They're actually the spawn point of the Jehovah's Witnesses and a couple other splinter groups. They're slightly
real
less
nice ones, like Waco.
The author, Stephen N. Haskell, and he seems to be an evangelist. He's in, the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Yeah. So, and then somebody asked me what I was imbibing. I'm kind of amused at this one. I picked this up the last time I was in Austin. See how it's got snakes all over it? Black on black can, right? And
this is you in a can.
It's called Danger Noodle Island. Yeah, 12% imperial or 12% ABV, and it's really quite good. I think this is an Austin brewery. Too bad I don't get to Austin very often. Anyway, continue, please.
Yeah, 18 and 19. The exact meaning behind this act is unclear. Fritz and Hens-Piazza take the striking of the earth to signify the victory over the Arameans in battle. Sweeney writes that in the immediate context, the motif symbolizes the 3 victories that Joash would achieve against Hazael. But in the larger DH, quote, it points to Aram's survival and its later role in instigating Pekach's revolt against Pekahiah and the subsequent Syro-Ephraimitic War, which proved to be the beginning actions of a process that would lead ultimately to the destruction of both Aram and northern Israel by the Assyrian Empire, 2 Kings 15 and 16, end quote. And McKenzie comments, quote, The relationship between Elisha and the king is also different. The man of God becomes angry with the king for striking the ground only 3 times, although he gives no directions beforehand about either the number or purpose of the strikes. Efforts on the part of commentators to find fault with the king for vacillating, sorry.
Fascinating.
Okay,
Vacillating, yes. Thinking small or acting without enthusiasm or conviction are not supported by the text and are not convincing. So, Chun Li So proposes that the king showed disregard for holy war, as in 1 Kings 20:25. The possible connection is intriguing, but there is no indication in 2 Kings 13, 18, and 19 that holy war is at issue. Rather, verses 18 and 19 are to be explained as an addition, correcting the promise of complete victory over Aram and limiting the number of victories won by Israel to 3, probably to connect to the 3 battle accounts now in 1 Kings 20 and 22. On verse 20, every spring, in Hebrew, Bashana, literally coming year. Is it Bo or Ba? Wait a minute. Just a bit nitpicking here. Verse 20. Boshan. It's Ba. It's Bashana.
Shana. Oh yeah, well with the comments, so it's Bo.
Yeah, it's a Ba. It's a Ba. Yeah. Bashana, literally coming year. Yeah. The phrase is generally rendered as either when the year came, according to Septuagint, Targum, Rashi, Kara, Butseko, and Sweeney, who renders at the beginning of the year, or in that year, according to Vulgate, Peshita, Kimchi, and Ibn Kaspi. Cogan writes that the Masoretic text reading is meaningless and suggests correcting it to Bevo Hashana, in the coming of the year, following Septuagint and Targum. On verse 21, Fritz writes that the addition, quote, signals the power of the prophet that stretches beyond his death and is exemplary of the hyperbole, through which Elisha's miraculous force is described in the later tradition. Even the corpse that touches the man of God is brought back to life, end quote. Hens-Piazza writes that the account is, quote, most likely a tale included to convey divine care for the king and his community despite the prophet's death. The prophet, who was a source of protection and power during his life, continues to be so even in his death, end quote. She adds that the story could also be a warning that the power of the Lord over life and death, which was present among them in the person of the prophet, is now gone. And finally, 22 through 25, Fritz comments, this passage relating Joash's final victories over Aram is kept in a quite general tone and is likely the work of D.H. No details are put forward, but there is historical evidence for the change of rulership from Hazael to Ben-Hadad III, confirmed by the Assyrian sources. Even if there exists a tradition for the passage in question here, it cannot have been very detailed. Maybe the narrative version in 1 Kings 20 of a victory of Joash at Afek was available. It seems, however, to be historically accurate that Joash did indeed recapture the territories in northern East Jordan that had been lost to Hazael. There is no mention of the significant part played by Assyria. Damascus was taken and Aram seriously weakened by Adad Nirari III, as we can gather from the tribute lists. On the stele from Tel Erime, Joash too appears as a tributary next to Tyre and Sidon. This means that, following Joash's succession to the throne, Ashur not only dealt a considerable blow to the strength of the Arameans at Damascus, but also gained temporary control over Israel. Notwithstanding the territorial gains against the Arameans and his recent coming into power, Joash would have had to acknowledge the supremacy of the Assyrian king soon.
Yeah, it's not mentioned in the story, but yeah.
They didn't actually win their land back. Someone else won their land, and they maybe negotiated a more advantageous form of serfdom.
Mm-hmm. And there is a hint at the beginning of the chapter where it says, and then, God listened to their prayers and sent them a savior. It doesn't say who the name is, and then so it's possible that there was
savior always someone else following some other god. Why does God suck so much at his job?
Yeah, and then I guess they were like, no, it can't be someone else. We'll make Joash be the savior. I mean, he's also mentioned in archaeology.
Yeah.
By an
God
Assyrian
sucks at his job
king,
because nobody trained him properly. There was no one to train him.
Oh, the poor little baby. He's only
Because
had
when he was
12
created,
years.
the goddesses who created Jehovah backed away into the darkness of the abyss so that he woke up alone and decided that since he didn't see anybody else around, that he must have created himself, or he must be eternal.
I mean,
that's the Gnostic story, right?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if I read that abomination, I might drop it too.
It's Gnostic. It's Coptic.
Oh.
The Coptics are still around in Egypt.
Gnostics were mostly.
But it was like Sophia had to tell him.
The Gnostic works were mostly Coptic.
Okay, so we're talking about. I'm pretty sure this was from the Nag Hammadi.
Yep, Nag Hammadi. That was Coptic.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
But is it like actual Coptic Christians today have
all
all these?
I have no fucking idea.
Or was it just written?
I have absolutely no clue.
The language.
It was written in Coptic.
Okay. That makes sense.
But I just love that there's a creation story for God.
Yeah.
They had to. The Gnostics wanted to explain how the God of the Old Testament was this evil monster, became the God of the New Testament, and then their explanation is that Yahweh is actually Yaldabaoth, and in the New Testament, Jesus and Elohim is like
who are curious
the real
and don't
God.
know, God was created as a reanimated abortion.
In the void.
I mean, I guess in some way, sure. There are multiple creation stories. There's on the creation of the world. There's the Holy Book of the Great Invisible Spirit, and these texts give like slightly different stories, slightly different theologies.
Lawrence, I'm keen to have a conversation about that, unless you might want to consider that a topic, because when you do a documentary video, it's exquisite. I mean,
I might do one on it, but the thing is, there's so many works, and they only share like some similarities.
Top 5 origin stories for God
about it, if possible, or if you want to do one of your documentaries, I'm sure that would be a good one.
You have to. I'm perfectly fine having like a convo about it, but I would have to like reread a few of these texts, or no, I wouldn't have to reread them. I'd have to just listen to the episodes that we did on them where we read all of them. So
it would be interesting to know which version the Christian like orthodoxy or whatever rejected. Which is the one they were like, this is what the Gnostics believe, and we can't believe that. We have to believe that.
Well, that could be most of them, because
is
Irenaeus in his Against Heresies, I think he had like 80. He had like 80 different heresies. They weren't all Gnostic, but some of them were. So yeah, they straight up rejected like a shit.
So like the word Gnostic that we use is not necessarily referring to like one tradition that evolved over time. It's actually refers to
definitely not
Christians.
One.
Speaking of
Christians, everybody mute.
When Lawrence started to correct me, I realized I had a fundamental misunderstanding of what that meant.
Yeah. So the Gnostics, they had their own sects, in a way. Like they had the Sethians, the Valentinians, there are a couple others too that we can actually like define. But because I'm gonna guess the vast majority of their texts have been lost over time, and a lot of them are very corrupt, like missing phrases everywhere. Some of them are very mystical. So it's kind of hard to decipher a lot of them as to what they're even talking about. But a lot of it was certainly based on like Platonic philosophy. So it does get really complicated real quick in some of those.
Okay, I'd be interested to hear more. I mean, the real reason that you get an education beyond everyone else's is so that you can bring up everyone else who doesn't have the time to read all of these things and understand it the way that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to teach people this stuff. I want to teach people how there is this initial primal being that, in order to create everything else, had to think about itself so it had to have a reflection of itself through which it could mediate it gets really platonic and very
weird,
detailed very fast.
Yeah, it's very twisting your brain in on itself kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But you know what I thought? Because the thing that has best helped me in understanding as well as I can the divisions between these different ideological groups is actually evolution. I mean, we're tracing, something that sprung off but was chopped down, possibly we don't know how many branches at what point, like back if you go through the systemic classification of life, maybe the diapsid level, you've got, so you're not quite sure about how many twigs and branches and divisions there were of this thing that is way down there and has no living descendants. And so, but it's interesting how that process is very similar here in ideological branching and breaking, granted with different fundamental things pushing it here or there, but that it's the same basic process of some ideas surviving and branching and others dying. And I wonder
if gave me a wonderful idea, Lilith, the way that you're describing when you say down to the diapsid level. I was about to embark on a video that was going to be talking about the division between within reptiles, the archosaurs and lepidosaurs. But what you're talking about, it goes even more basic than that. So talk about something that very few people know anything about. The first, what they used to say, cotylosaurs. I mean, the first, before there were synapsids, diapsids, they were just tetrapods starting to become like these things.
Yeah, basal amniotes.
It's got me thinking. So yeah, there's script in the works. Thank you.
Yeah, also languages, the development of languages is a very good analogy for evolution, I think.
I sometimes wonder if that's the reason they don't want children to understand evolution, not just because we'll understand our physical relationship to all other life and that we're part of the same tree, but that it provides an understanding of the natural process by which we get all these diverse things that simplistic myths were first called in to explain. And I was taught that I had to believe in a literal Genesis creation and the Tower of Babel as a real thing and all the rest of it. It just doesn't survive the least bit of scrutiny if you understand the evolutionary process in the slightest.
Yeah, Genesis for the explaining where life comes from, Tower of Babel explaining languages,
where languages come from, yeah.
And then the story of Noah and his 3 sons, whatever, just explaining where all the races come from, and they're all really bad, but some of them are worse, more obviously wrong than others.
Are you done?
Yeah, I was going to say, so in respect for the Christian commentators coming back, I request everyone to mute their mics for a few seconds while Tomo speaks.
I guess. Okay, so we'll start with Ephraim, who wrote from the spiritual. What is it, Isaac, for freaking...
I literally told
Isaac,
everyone to be quiet for your introduction. Why aren't you doing it?
What introduction? That's just an idea. It's not shush.
Okay.
So, from the spiritual point of view, the Lord's arrow of victory in Elisha's sign signifies our Savior hanging from the wood and giving up his spirit, while the fact that the arrow is shot from the window placed eastwards means that the accomplishment of our salvation has been obtained through the ascension of our Lord, as he rides higher than the heavens of the eastern heavens.
That is probably to date the worst interpretation I've ever
from
heard.
The wood, but yeah.
You always say that.
Oh my god!
I probably say that a lot. Yeah.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
You do.
Oh.
Moreover, he writes that the power that the Lord gives to the bones of Elisha is symbolic of the seed of resurrection. Obviously.
I have not heard worse literary analysis since my 11th grade English teacher, who was a woman famous for her stupidity.
Also,
yeah. There's not many people famous for their stupidity. I mean, Donald Trump, Kent Hovind, there's a handful, but I mean, to have a teacher famous for that.
There was many a legend that passed through the school of her infamous stupidity. And honestly, I sat in her class for a year and I believed all of them. Uncritically.
Our Lady of Infinite Stupidity.
I taught my science teacher that dogs are the same species, as in like different breeds of dogs are actually the same species.
That's something that hurts me. My kids, my kids went through science class in Texas, and I talked to a couple of my son's science teachers. I didn't, unfortunately, get to talk to the one that I wanted to talk to most. But their science teachers said, each said very stupid things. One of them said that we couldn't use cockroaches in an experiment because it was a live animal. It would be a fair thing to say, but they said we couldn't use it because they said cockroaches were vertebrates, and you can't use vertebrates in a science experiment in middle school. I had to explain to a science teacher that cockroaches do not have vertebrae. Then another science teacher complained about snakes, saying that snakes were invertebrates because they were too wiggly to have spines.
They're nothing but spine.
Yeah, I know, right?
Spine with a head on it.
But my favorite one, and this is the one that I wanted to make famous, was they had passed out all these textbooks, and the teacher told them that told the class that there have never been any beneficial mutations. And my son, with the book open to the appropriate page and his finger on the paragraph, says, "But teacher, the book lists beneficial mutations." My son was sent to the office for insubordination. And his mother begged me not to make that teacher famous, because that was my goal.
I think you should anyways.
That is, I would ask your son, I'd give him the final say, but that is what you get with science taught by creationists. And that was the first like 7 to 8 years of until the age of reason. That was all I knew. Unfortunately, I was already sort of pre-blocked to learn. It took a lot of work to get my brain out of those chains to the point where I could understand what evolution was. Not because it's a difficult concept, but because I was deliberately crippled to prevent me from doing so.
Yeah. Kitsune in the chat said you should tell the first teacher just because cockroaches are crunchy doesn't mean they have a backbone.
That's a good one.
I made vindaloo with crickets as the protein source. Mm-hmm. I've done it twice. The second time was much better because I put a lot more work into it. The first time I didn't bother taking them apart. And so when somebody asked my son, we were eating we were doing it as a charity telethon thing. And my son is having a bowl of this and they're asking him, what does it taste like? And he goes, it tastes like chicken. Sharp, pointy chicken.
Stabby.
Stabby chicken. The sad thing is when you harvest enough crickets to feed an adult human being, that's a whole lot of crickets. I thought 50 would be enough. No, it's for one person. A serving for one person requires more than 50 crickets.
So you know the expression "love is in the air," right? If it was Christian "love is in the air," it would be a flock of locusts.
Okay.
From the Bible.
Right. Tomer?
I have more. It's all your fault.
I had my finger
yeah.
over the button, Tamara. I was waiting for you to call it.
Yeah, sorry. OT. There we go. So the apostolic constitutions and Chrysostom said that the bodies of the saints are holy and filled with grace, so that they can still perform miracles from the sepulchre. Whatever that means. Yeah.
Sepulchre. It's like
sepulchre is the
yeah, no, but just that they are whole and filled with never mind.
It's a
the bodies of the saints. Yeah. And Origen said Origen is said that the case of Elisha demonstrates once more that the prescriptions of the law concerning dead bodies and the pollution deriving from them are meaningless.
Okay, what it means that they're so, it's that God came in them so much that it's soaked into their bones even after they're dead. That's what it means.
Yeah, they love it when God comes into them.
Yeah.
Fill me with the Spirit.
That's why they're always like bowing down to God. They're trying to, get him to hit it from the back.
I have been anointed.
Oh, we all get VIP tickets to hell.
Yeah, I'm done here.
I'm done here.
I'm not generally, just like I'm almost at the edge.
That really did sound like a letter of resignation.
Not yet.
Not yet. We're close. Not yet. Okay.
Not until Psalms.
I guess. Nah.
Tomer, we appreciate you. I just got to say that for legal reasons.
For legal reasons, yeah.
Also for good. We love you, Tomer. We love you.
Yeah.
And I sincerely appreciate what you do for this show, Tomer. Seriously.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to move on to 14 then.
Yeah, read up to 16.
Okay, so Amaziah reigns in Judah.
Yeah.
In the second year of King Joash, son of Joash of Israel, King Amaziah, son of Joash of Judah, began to reign. He was 25 years old, and he began to reign and reigned 29 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Jehoaddan of Jerusalem.
Almost.
He did what was right in the sight of the Lord, yet not like his ancestor David in all the things that his father Joash had done. But the high places were not removed. The people still sacrificed and made offerings to the high places. As soon as the royal power was firmly in his hand, he killed his servants who had murdered his father, the king. But he did not put to death the children of the murderers, according to what is written by the law of Moses, where the Lord commanded, the parents shall not be put to death for the children of to be put to death for the parents. Let me say that again. The parents shall not be put to death for the children, or the children be put to death for the parents, but all shall be put to death for their own sins. He killed 10,000 Edomites in the valley of Salt, and took Selah by storm. He called it Joktheel, for its name to this day, which is its name to this day. Then Amaziah sent messengers to King Jehoash, son of Jehoaz. Jehoash, son of Jehoaz.
Jehoash, son of Jehoahaz.
Jehoaz. Okay, I like that one better. Jehoaz, son of Jehu. Yehu of Israel. Come.
Yahoo. Definitely Yahoo.
Let us look one another in the face. King Jehoash of Israel sent word to King Amaziah of Judah, and a thorn bush on Lebanon sent a cedar on Lebanon, saying, give your daughter to my son for a wife. But a wild animal of Lebanon passed by and trampled down the thorn bush. You have indeed. Well, hold on, I lost my place here.
It's a parable.
Yes. You have indeed defeated Edom, but your heart has lifted you up Be content with your glory and stay home. For why should you provoke trouble so that you fall, you and Judah with you? But Amaziah would not listen. So King Jehoash of Israel went up, and he and King Amaziah of Judah faced one another in battle with Beth Shemesh, which belongs to Judah. Judah was defeated by Israel. Everyone fled home. King Jehoash of Israel captured King Amaziah of Judah, son of Jehoash, son of Amaziah, at Beth Shemesh. He came to Jerusalem and broke down the wall of Jerusalem from Ephraim Gate to Corner Gate, a distance of 400 cubits, which is really hard to measure. He seized all the gold and silver and all the vessels that were found in the house of the Lord and in the treasuries of the king's house, as well as the hostages, and returned to Samaria. Now, the rest of the acts that Jehoash did, his might, and how he fought with King Amaziah of Judah, were they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Israel? Ha ha ha! Checkmate, asshole. Jehoash slept with his ancestors, and was buried in Samaria with the kings of Israel. Then his son Jeroboam succeeded him.
Yeah.
King Amaziah of Joash of Judah.
Aaron,
what?
We're done. I just from
We're done?
till 16. Yes.
I was just starting to get in a roll.
He's on a roll.
I know.
Oh, party pooper.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the
Why
first
did you
time we have a
interrupt this,
king.
man?
This is the first time we have a king with the same name as a previous.
Well,
king.
it's not the same name.
Yeah.
There's Jehoash and Jehoaz.
Jehoahaz.
No, I'm talking
it's
about
not-
this guy. At the end of this, I'm not talking about people with the same name on either in the two
Jeroboam.
different families. For some reason, the kings of Judah and the kings of Israel share a lot of names in common. I'm saying this is the first time we've had a king of the same family, the same line, who has the same name as a previous king in the same line. So Jeroboam is the second Jeroboam of Israel.
Yeah.
I just
The
really
first one
like
was Jeroboam,
M.
son of
Doug's.
Nebat.
I just really like M. Doug's comment where he's like, Joe, meet J, Ja, Ya, Yay, Yahoo, and Jaya. No, none of them are from Yahwist families. Why do you ask?
Sometimes the J is J, sometimes the J is yeah, and you just got to figure out when it arbitrarily changes.
Yeah,
Honestly,
well,
also have
the
at the end of
point
the
is they're only named after God, so obviously they're.
I mean, there is no Ja in Hebrew. It's like it's later on, like you get
it's
the Ja with the Gimel
Jerusalem?
with Yerushalayim.
Yeah.
I mean, you have Yerushalayim, you have Yerushalem, but common is Yerushalayim.
Yeah. It's close. That one's not
Okay,
too
well,
far.
we still had to go with the J for the purposes of the joke because there's only so many syllables we can cram into a YouTube comment. Point is still valid.
Yeah,
I guess.
Yeah, like yeah. I mean, the English transliterations of biblical names are. I mean, they're not like directly from the Hebrew into English. They've gone from the Greek to the Latin, then English. So, and I think even French at one point. So it's gonna. They've kept certain, trends or whatever. So like the J is always there, except when it isn't. Yeah. And then you have an I instead.
Yeah.
But yeah, like Isaiah, right? Is you could either could have easily have been, what made me think? Could have been, I don't know, Jeshaya or something like that.
Jehovah starts with an I.
Oh God.
Well, it's the same.
Yeah. Okay, so I think I'll start if Lawrence doesn't have anything to say. So on verses 1 through 4, Hens-Piazza comments, with attention now shifting to the south, the chapter opens with a summary of Amaziah's reign in Judah. In characteristic fashion, the age at which he assumed kingship is noted, 25 years, and the length of his tenure as king is recorded as 29 years. His father Joash and his mother Jehoadan, or Jehoadin, it depends on the corrective, are both identified. Yeah. As expected, the Deuteronomistic evaluation of the king follows on the heels of this introductory biography. Though Amaziah did what was right in the sight of the Lord, quote unquote, an air of reserve surrounds the assessment. The record draws a contrast between the king and David, suggesting that he never quite reached the benchmark that was established by his more accomplished ancestor. Moreover, the positive appraisal is further qualified by Amaziah's maintenance of the high places, quote unquote, where the people continued to sacrifice and make offerings. In this sense, he was a lot like his father Joash, who received a similar assessment in 12:2.
Wait, when you say maintenance, you don't mean like, it doesn't say anything in the text about him like fixing them. It's more like he maintained them in the land, right?
I mean, that's what she wrote. Like, she used maintenance.
I never heard of.
Well, permitted them to remain could be what was intended, or it could be that perhaps it was normal to, give some to all the priests for the base maintenance of sacred sites by a ruler. That would be fairly reasonable. I can't say for sure that it was or wasn't. I'm just saying, At the same time, it's of all the things that David did, I don't recall any of his stories involving taking any of the worship sites out of Israel or dealing with any Baal or Asherah. It all seems to be later in the narrative that we have all this argument about how to worship. But in David's day, there's more stories about him than any other king. There's nothing to it.
It's taken for granted that there was one temple and all the worship was done there, and it wasn't until after
the temple wasn't built until Solomon.
Well, sorry, the tabernacle, whatever, where the thing was. I mean, there's also the idea that before the temple was established, it was kind of permissible to worship in the high places.
Maybe, but there was still, even in the Judges before the Kings, there was the thing with Gideon and the destruction of a Baal altar and the destruction of an Asherah pole and the wood and the making an altar to Yahweh on it. Granted, obviously, altars were a little more flexible before the temple, but at the same time, the narrative of fighting against these actually indigenous gods and pretending that we're special and supposed to stamp them out, it's interesting that never touches David directly. Even though before and after him, at least in the context of the narrative, not in the context of when it was actually written.
It's taken for granted. Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, like the way the story is written, it's like, of course there was no problems with Baal or Asherah. Like everything is.
Yeah, or with it doesn't even focus on that. It focuses on
maybe
battles more, and
that could be because it's a much later story, right?
Could be.
By the time it was written, it was already established that David was this great Yahwist king. So
you would never even think. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Okay, on verse 6, the verse quotes from Deuteronomy 24:16. Cogan writes that this quotation indicates that Amaziah's behavior deviated from the norm. The goal of the quoted law is to, quote, curb the blood vengeance, unquote, though we can't tell if Amaziah based himself on a written book that he had, or that there is an estimation by D.H. that Amaziah acted by the Deuteronomistic law code, which was formed during Josiah's days. McKenzie takes verse 6 to be an editorial comment by D.H., as the quotation from Deuteronomy 24:16 supports the evaluation that Amaziah did what Yahweh considered right. He writes that while we don't know why Amaziah... Sorry?
I'm just showing off my tie.
It's a very cool tie. Give it a chin scratch for me. Who's your good little Major Doodle? Aww.
So he writes that while we don't know why Amaziah didn't execute the assassin's children, he notes Landersdorfer's opinion that this was a demonstration of restraint that aided Amaziah in his struggle to retain power.
I do love
I got a question for Tomer.
Mm-hmm.
What? I've been gagged. Hold on.
Aren't we all?
You wish.
Okay, says Matt White says, Tomer, is town name Salem related to Shalom, peace?
I mean, it depends. Like, you have there are instances where it does, but there are like instances where it's unclear. I mean, Yerushalayim is an example. We don't really know where the Shalem comes from, if it means peace. But I mean, like you have places like Neve Shalom, which Shalom is like mean peace, but like
Salem is just English name for Shalem, which is mentioned in the Bible as like where Melchizedek lived. And later is identified as being the same as Jerusalem, but we don't know.
Yeah,
exactly
I actually have a video coming out about that. I have done already quite a lot of research on it, but I have to obviously finish the research. There are a few books that I have open on for PDFs of them. But that is going to be like the next big project for me after I finish my capstone paper.
I don't think we have any archaeological proof that evidence that there was like any god called Shalem or Shalem, I think.
No, but there was a god called Zedek.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Righteousness, peace. Yeah, I guess there's a clue.
I think it'll be a fun investigation.
Interesting. That's cool.
Yeah. Okay, on verse 7, the Valley of Salt. In Hebrew, Gei Melach. Septuagint reads Gai Mele and Peshita Gamla. The exact location of the Valley of Salt is unclear, though it was known in David's time, as we see in 2 Samuel 8:13 and Psalms 62. Cogan notes Mazel's opinion that this was Gei Charashim in 1 Chronicles 4:14 at the north of the Arabah, a place rich with mines of copper and iron. Fritz, however, writes that it is likely at the east of the Arabah. Sweeney notes that some identify it with the Wadi el-Milch in southern Judah, which bears a similar name, or with the lowlands of Es-Sebka, south of the Dead Sea. McKenzie takes the Valley of Salt to be the wide valley at the Arabah that formed a buffer between Judah and Edom. On Sela, in Hebrew Ha-Sela, literally the crag, as we see in Septuagint and Vulgate, the exact location of this place is unclear. It has long been identified as Petra, based on the Septuagint 10 Petran, followed by Eusebius, as we see in Onomasticon 142, sections 7 and 8, and 144, 7 through 9. McKenzie, however, notes that the lack of evidence for the occupation of Petra before the 7th century BCE renders it improbable as the site taken by Amaziah. Sweeney notes that many identified with modern Bayar in Jordan, east of the Arabah and north of Petra. Fritz and Cogan, however, identify it as Es-Sela, 8 kilometers southwest of Et Tafile, where there is ceramic evidence for an Iron Age settlement. Targum reads the fortress and Peshita Sela. On Yoktiel, it is not the same Yoktiel of the Judean Shephelah found in Joshua 15:38. The exact reason for the name change is unclear. Rashi wrote that the place, quote, set his teeth on edge, in Hebrew kihui shinaim, as is said in 2 Chronicles 25:14. After Amaziah came from killing the Edomites, he brought the gods of the children of Seir, and he would bow down to them, end quote. Hens-Piazza notes that assigning new identity to persons or places is an expression of domination over a people or a site. On verse 8, come let us face each other in battle. The Hebrew Bible reads, Lecha nitra'e panim, literally, let us go and meet in face. Septuagint has, come let us be seen by faces. This phrase is ambiguous. Though Vulgate and Peshita take it as meeting face to face, Targum reads, let us face off in battle. This reading is accepted by traditionals, with Kimchi noting that this interpretation is supported by 2 Chronicles 25, 6 through 10. Josephus, in Antiquities 9, 196, wrote, quote, becoming prideful, he wrote to Joas, the king of the Israelites, directing him, along with all his people, to obey him, just as they had earlier obeyed his ancestors David and Solomon. If he did not wish to be reasonable, he should realize that the rule would be decided by war, end quote. Likewise, Cogan writes that from the word nitra'e, written in the hitpa'el form, and from the context, the reference is to a hostile encounter. He writes that such a semantic tone is apparent in Akkadian as well as in Babylonian chronicles. Hens-Piazza, however, writes that this phrase need not be understood initially as a hostile overture. She writes, quote, Amaziah may have been hoping to establish more equitable relations with the north. Since the time of the Omrides, relations between the two siblings states were uneven and antagonistic, with the north always dominant. However, Jehoash's response makes clear that he does not take kindly to the invitation. If more equitable relations were the goal, he evidently would not even consider a shift in the balance of power. With the most intimidating language, his response to Amaziah is twofold.
Do you know what this reminds me of? There's a Key and Peele sketch that talks about or demonstrates the difficulty in understanding tone in text, where you have the one guy messaging his friend about going out, and the way everything is phrased, his friend takes it as an insult, but it's not intended that way. He's just like, oh, all happy, but you can't tell. So the texts go back and forth, and literally his friend at the end is like coming at him ready to come after him with a bat. And he's like, oh, you got me something for my costume. You're so great, when they finally meet in person. It's very much giving those vibes of like, I don't know who's trying to be like, are they actually trying to be conciliatory? Are they actually just being a raging jerk? It's, yeah. Or was there an intent one way that was understood the other way, and then everything went boom? Wouldn't be the first time in human history.
Yeah, this simple reasoning seems to imply, like, come, let us go to battle. And then the other one's like, who do you think you are? Like,
yeah.
You think you're gonna win? And then they lose.
Mm-hmm. Okay, on verses 9 and 10, Sweeney comments, Joash's response, which employs the parable of the bramble that demanded a marriage between its son and the daughter of the cedar, displays a diplomatic art form observable in Canaan as early as the Aman period, 14th century BCE, when King Labayu of Shechem informed the Egyptian pharaoh that even ants bite the hand that slaps them in response to charges that he had attacked neighboring city-states. Compare Judges 9, 7-21 and Isaiah 5, 1-7. Joash's response that Amaziah should content himself with his victory alone shows judicious patience. Joash was allied with the Assyrian monarch Adad-Nirari III, which perhaps gave Joash the support necessary to put Amaziah in his place. On verses 11 and 12, Fritz comments, of the decisive battle at Bet Shemesh, we are told only the result, that is, the defeat of Judah. Bet Shemesh was situated on the northern edge of the Shephelah at Khirbet Erumele, and was, despite its frequent destruction, continuously settled during Iron Age 1 and 2. The city was of strategic value in that it marked the entrance to the ascent to Jerusalem, approaching from the coast. In addition, the plain and the low foothills were eminently suitable for the assembling of troops, and therefore also as a battle site. It would appear that Amaziah deliberately sought out this important and opportune place.
I'm sorry, Iron Age 1 and 2 sounds like an unnecessary sequel to a video game.
Yeah, like...
Yeah, it's also called Early Iron Age and Late Iron Age.
Yeah.
I know. It's just...
But then it always gets more complicated because there was like Iron Age 1A or Iron Age 2B or some shit like
and
that.
And sometimes it's also said called like lower and upper. But
yeah.
That's just to do like where it's found.
Guys, you can divide things endlessly.
I mean, I know that from experience.
And it means, yeah.
Okay, and finally, 13 and 14, Hens-Piazza comments, although the account explains that Amaziah would not heed Joash's threat, what he did to instigate the war is not stated. The battle occurs when Jehoash, king of Israel, marches up in Beth Shemesh in Judah and is completely victorious. King Amaziah is captured, Jerusalem is attacked, and part of its fortifying wall on the west is destroyed. To add insult to injury, the temple so recently restored by Amaziah's father in 12:4-16 is ransacked of all its gold and silver vessels, as is the king's own house. Finally, we are told that Jehoash also takes hostages. Because Amaziah, who was initially noted as captured, remains on the throne in Judah, it may be that the hostages were taken as a ransom for the king's life. Hence, despite the somewhat positive appraisal Amaziah receives before the Lord, he is not exempt from the wrath and hostilities of his bordering sibling state. Similarly, despite the negative assessment of virtually all the northern kings, including Jehoash, who have followed in the path of Jeroboam, the prospect of divine punishment for infidelity must have seemed only a dim illusion. Perhaps it was even rejected out of hand as pure fallacy when measured against Israel's military achievements. Yeah, that's it. You are muted, Aaron. You are muted, Aaron. Aaron is muted.
Dear Aaron, please become unmuted.
Yes. Thank you, Aaron.
All right, so I'm taking over I'm starting at 15.
17.
17. Okay. King Amaziah, son of Joash of Judah, lived 15 years after the death of King Jehoash, son of Jehoaz of Israel. Now, the rest of the deeds of Amaziah, are they not written in the book of the annals of kings of Judah? They made a conspiracy against him in Jerusalem, and he fled to Lachish. But they sent after him to Lachish and killed him there. They brought him on horses, and he was buried in Jerusalem with his ancestors in the Jerusalem, not Jerusalem. It's Yerushalayim. What was it? Say that again.
Yerushalayim, but you can use the English word because I'm not an asshole.
I'm sorry. Could you repeat that again?
No.
Somehow, I'm the asshole.
I didn't say No. I didn't say that. I didn't say that I'm not going to specifically be
Don't need to defend yourself, Tomer. Don't sweat.
I always feel like I need to defend myself.
No.
This is what family is.
Yeah.
You know what? This is what family is. It reminds me of when I was young, and if anyone had a thing that they were asked to do that they couldn't do, they would just quote The Princess Bride and go, "Tyrone, you know how much I love watching you work. But I've got my country's 500th anniversary to plan, my wedding to arrange, my wife to murder, and Gilda to frame for it. I'm swamped."
Yeah, without a movie reference, this wouldn't be our show.
Exactly.
Okay, so, they brought him on horses, and he was buried in Jerusalem with his ancestors in the city of David. All the people of Judah, or is it Judah? We don't know. Took
Yehuda. You're welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah, but don't worry, Tomer's not an asshole.
Became Yehuda.
No.
Okay.
Yehuda is the original, and then it became Judah eventually.
I will amend.
Because the Greeks also didn't really like the h sound either. So.
Yeah.
Let's make it 2 syllables. Why not be? Yehuda took Azariah, who was 16 years old, and made him king to succeed after his father Amaziah.
Oh.
He rebuilt Elath and restored it to Yehuda after King Amaziah slept with his ancestors.
Amaziah.
Can we please stop making teenagers king?
Oh, it gets better.
They're not even 19.
It gets better, don't worry.
He's older
than the
15th
year
the other Joash.
of King Amaziah.
Yeah.
In the 15th year of King Amaziah, son of Joash of Yehuda, King Jeroboam, son of Joash of Israel, began to reign in Samaria. He reigned 41 years. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. He did not depart from all the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, that he caused Israel to sin. He restored the border of Israel from Lebo Hamath as far as the Sea of Arabah, according to the word of the Lord, the God of Israel, which he spoke by his servant Jonah of Amittai, the prophet, who was from Gath-Hepher. Gath-Hepher?
Gath-Hepher, but yeah, Gath-Hepher.
Yeah.
I can only do so much, dude.
It's okay.
Yeah, heifer
For the
is
Lord
like
saw...
it's not a heifer, but it's...
For the Lord saw that the distress of Israel was very bitter, and there was no one left, bond or free, and no one to help Israel. But the Lord had not said that he would blot out the name of Israel from under heaven, so he saved them by the hand of Jeroboam, son of Joash. Now, the rest of the acts of Jeroboam and all that he did, and his might, and how he fought, and how he recovered Israel, Damascus, and Hamath, which had belonged to Judah, are they not written in the book of annals of the kings of Israel? Jeroboam slept with his ancestors, the kings of Israel. His son, Zechariah, succeeded him.
So after all that, like the one king who was able to restore some of the land barely gets any kind of narrative.
Yeah, well, you know,
real feel for the guy.
He wasn't some kid who was raised by cult priests who seized power through him. So obviously, nothing he did was interesting.
There's your epitaph. Nothing he did was interesting. Here lies grimy.
No, but it's not because it isn't actually interesting. It's explicitly because he didn't have a cool origin story. So,
John Klein gifted 5 RN-Raw memberships. Luke Snyder, with a whole lot of umlauts like on every part of his name, so that those letters should be pronounced differently than they are, gifted 5 RN-Raw memberships. And then Luke Snyder, again with too many umlauts and other adornments, says, is there any reliable way to corroborate these historical claims according to the current archaeology?
Some of them, sure.
Well, the people existed, yeah, but...
Yeah, but the sad thing is that none of it is relevant to whether there's a god or not.
Well, yeah. You can't really be corroborating any of those mythical claims.
Yeah, I don't think there is any like extra biblical sources about Amati's assassination.
Right, I don't think so.
Exactly.
But
the commentators don't specify. So
the only thing we have is that we have we have from the archaeology is, you know, these are some of the kings that we know existed, and the order makes sense. Like the older stories refer to older kings in the story, and later archaeological finds refer to kings that are later in the story. And also, you know, who their enemy was, it lines up. So there's definitely some historical basis to what we're reading, but like all of the events, there's nothing. The closest thing I think is maybe a particular battle, or this king fought with this king of Aram, like that we have some evidence for.
Yeah. We have evidence for like certain battles. We have evidence for a good amount of the worship practices, and evidence for extra biblical evidence for some of the kings. And because, as you just mentioned, like the order lines up, I can at least say that, like, these kings were probably real kings at around the time that the Bible says they were.
And it would have been easy for them to have like a king list that was
definitely
fairly
they had tons of king lists.
Accurate until the time that this was written. When this was written down, they were using a king's list that was fairly accurate from the time of, you know.
And they may indeed have had annals of the kings of Israel and Judah that we just no longer have access to. History's kind of messy that way, but at the same time, the in a sense, the most boring parts are probably kind of mostly true. So and so lived so long and did so and so and then died. But the the interesting little interstitial stories with Elisha and the arrows and the drama, no, that's just working in your myths and gloss.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'll start on verse 19. Sweeney comments, Amaziah's flight to Lachish makes a great deal of sense for an internal revolt, since Lachish, a heavily fortified site identified with Tel Lachish or Tel Ed Duer in the western Shephelah, served as a sort of a second capital for Judah. Lachish enabled the Davidic kings to control Judah's western borders, to project power into the Philistine regions, and to defend Judah against attack from the coastal plain. It was a likely site for Amaziah to rally support and to defend himself against the conspirators. Interpreters assume that Amaziah's assassination came as a result of his failed attempt to renegotiate his relationship with Israel, but such a view does not explain why he was killed 15 years after the death of Joash. Because Jeroboam ben Joash controlled an empire that extended from Lebo Hamath to the Sea of Arabah, it is likely that Amaziah's death served northern Israelite interests. End quote.
And Lachish is important because it comes up. It's an important archaeological find.
Yeah.
Is the siege of Lachish by Sancheiriv? Sancheiriv of Assyria. He pretty much defeated the Israelites at Lachish and brought them back.
Sennacherib. Yeah.
I don't think the Bible actually talks about it that much, but we have the location, and we also have in Nineveh, capital of Assyria, I think under Sancheiriv, was that they have like these wall murals, and if you go to the British Museum in London, you can actually see the Battle of Lachish as the Assyrians saw it, which is interesting.
Yeah. Okay, on verse 21. So, yeah. On 21, McKenzie comments, Azariah is installed as king by all the people of Judah. The expression is ambiguous. It could refer to the citizenry of Judah or to the army. The latter possibility is supported by the fact that the army seems to have been responsible for Amaziah's assassination, since it took place in the fortified city of Lachish. Azariah's young age, 16, suggests that he was not the oldest son. Amaziah would have been 38 when Azariah was born. His older brothers may have died, maybe in defense of or opposition to their father, or been deemed unacceptable as successors, perhaps out of a concern that they would follow his policies too closely. Many scholars see Azariah's youth as evidence for co-regency, especially in view of the overall length assigned to his reign, 52 years, as we say in 15:2. The content and placement of verse 21 after the notice of Amaziah's death, though, do not support the theory of co-regency.
Yeah, Uzziah is also mentioned, I think, in some actual seals, like actual Israelite archaeology. His name is mentioned, I think. So there's there are two unprovenced stone seals.
He's
we're
also
not exactly sure where they're from.
Sorry. Yeah, he's also called Uzziah as well.
Yeah.
So there is a what is it called? Not a mark. There is like a inscription of Uzziah, king of Judah, in Aramaic from like this, but it's the second temple. So.
Oh yeah, I was talking about we have there are these stone seals with icons on them that were discovered in the 1800s, but we don't know exactly where they were. And one of them says on it like belonging to Abiah, minister of Uzziah, and the second one says belonging to Shobniah, minister of Uzziah.
Okay, so yeah.
Could be contemporary with him.
Yeah. Okay, so 22. This note seems unusual, given that Azariah is formally introduced in 15:1-7. Cogan suggested that it was placed here because of the chronological adjacency between Amaziah's death and the construction of Elat. Although commentators generally take it as referring to Amaziah, McKenzie suggested placing verse 22 between verse 6 and verse 7, noting that it is not clear whether this refers to Amaziah or to Azariah. He writes that some scholars point out that the verse's affinity with verse 7, in that access to the port of Elat with its lucrative trade would be a logical reason for war with Edom. The verse begins with who, followed by a perfect, just like verse 7, or prefect. It's perfect. And this would provide a trigger for haplography if it preceded verse 7. The second half of verse 22 would have been added after the displacement to make clear that it referred to Azariah and not to his father. On verse 25, Fritz comments, the same tradition of the victories over the Aramean states is drawn upon in verse 22 as in verses 28 and 29. The same facts are related, this time in the form of geographical data mentioned in the context of the word of an otherwise unknown prophet. As in 1 Kings 8:65, the description of the territory takes Lebo Hamath as the fictional border of Solomon's realm. The site of Lebo Hamath, or Lebwe, had marked the boundary of Egyptian hegemony in Canaan as early as the second half of the second millennium. The border between the realms of Damascus and Hamath, too, would have run through the area of the city in the first half of the first millennium. The same border was acknowledged in the 8th century when it was adopted as part of the Assyrian construction of provinces. It was only in post-exilic times that Lebo Hamath became the northern boundary of the realm of David and Solomon. Compare Numbers 13:21, 34:8, Ezekiel 47:15, and Joshua 13:5. To mention Lebo Hamath means to indicate the extension of Israelite territory as far as the border of Hamath. Thus, according to D.H., Jeroboam has returned state territory to its former size of the Davidic Solomonic realm. Its southern boundary is marked by the Sea of the Steppe, that is, the Dead Sea, seen Deuteronomy 3:17, 4:49, Joshua 3:16, and 12:3, where the East Jordanian areas of Israel border on Moab.
Also, it's implied that he fought these wars, got back this land, and then gave some of it to Judah. But that's strange.
Which is a little sus. It sounds very copium.
But I think the idea is it was like David's is originally part of David's conquest, and therefore it should belong to Judah. So he was a good king, so.
Right. Well, he's a good king because he did something that looks good for us now, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, at the same time, I mean, these guys, half the time they fought each other, half the time they were allies in war against something else. Okay, well, that's at least a third of the time. No, probably far more than that. They were both under the rule of some larger power. They were never the power. But the weakest make the greatest boasts. So.
On that same verse, Yonah, son of Amittai. No other information about Yonah is known. The book of Jonah, or Yonah, is considered a post-exilic work whose author attributed it to Jonah. Josephus in Antiquities 9:206 wrote that Jonah, quote, prophesied to Jeroboam that he ought to make war on the Syrians in order to defeat their forces and enlarge his own kingdom, in the northern part as far as the city of Amath, and on the south of Lake Asphaltitis, i.e. the Dead Sea, end quote. Hens-Piazza writes, quote, given the authorization accorded the prophet of Jonah's pronouncement in this record, it is noteworthy to observe what is omitted. Though both the prophets Amos and Hosea work in Israel during the career of Jeroboam II, they receive no mention at all. On 26 and 27, Fritz takes these verses to be the work of a later redactor. The addition, quote, stresses that Jeroboam's victories were effected by Yahweh and that the king is therefore a tool of God, end quote. The addition justifies the unusually long period of his reign and its positive effects as an act of God, and thus the negative judgment of verse 25 is revised and modified. McKenzie, however, takes these verses to be part of D.H.'s general writing of verses 24 through 29. He writes, quote, In verses 26 and 27, Jeroboam is cast as Yahweh's instrument of salvation, in response to Israel's distress to keep the country and people from extinction. Verse 26 alludes to 13:7 and the desperate circumstances during Joachaz's reign. Note the pluperfect had seen, the pluperfect. Despite Israel's severe oppression and the devastation resulting from it, Yahweh did not intend to destroy Israel at that time. Yahweh in his mercy provided Jeroboam, who rescued Israel from the abyss by restoring its greater proportions and its prosperity.
Anyone who doesn't understand why an abuse victim seemingly willingly stays in a relationship with their abuser needs to look at exactly why Israel has stayed with this God whose entire record appears to be, I keep beating you, but you don't love me.
And finally, and it's a bit long, on verse 28, Damascus and Hamath, which had belonged to Judah. Hebrew Bible reads, Damascus and Hamath for Judah in Israel. In Hebrew, LeYihuda BeYisra'el. The exact meaning of for Judah in Israel is unclear. It is found in most early translations, except for the Peshitta. Kimchi wrote that Jeroboam took the cities and returned them to Judah, for they owned them because David conquered them. Cogan suggested that originally there was only Israel, and the word for Judah was added by a Judean author who wished to indicate that Damascus and Hamath were part of David's conquests. He notes that M. Vogelstein preserves the reading and takes it as evidence of a united monarchy of Judah and Israel that Jeroboam established. Based on 1 Chronicles 5:17, regarding the command over Transjordan, quote, in the days of Jotham, king of Judah, and the days of Jeroboam, king of Israel, end quote, which in his opinion indicates a cooperation between the two. Cogan, however, writes that this suggestion is untenable. McKenzie notes two more proposals. One, Judah refers to Yaudi, which in Assyrian inscriptions refers to Jirli, aka Sam'al, according to H. Winkler and NEB. This proposal, however, was shown by Cogan and Tatmo to be untenable, since, quote, all references in Akkadian to Yaudi refer to biblical Judah, and the kings of Yaadi are always termed the kings of Sam'al, end quote. And two, amend the text to read how he fought with Damascus and how he turned away the wrath of Yahweh from Israel, according to Burney. This proposal stands in tension with verse 27, where Yahweh saves Israel through Jeroboam out of mercy for his people. And three, I said two more proposals, but there's three, amend the text to read, and how he restored Damascus and the wars of Judah against Israel, according to Naaman. This reading is problematic since that claim that Jeroboam restored Damascus is questionable, and the grammar of the verse is unusual. McKenzie concludes, quote, absent textual evidence for a viable alternative reading or a convincing emendation, the best course of action is to recognize this portion of the verse as corrupt and to leave it unreconstructed. With the accession of Zechariah, the prediction of 1030 that the fourth generation of Yehu's sons would occupy Israel's throne has come to fulfillment in verse 29. And
also, just a quick note. So I forget the name of the scholar you said suggested that it would be evidence of a united monarchy.
Vogelstein.
Okay, well, you know what? These days we have more information on the archaeology, and we know that there was never a united monarchy.
Not even close. Not even a little bit. Very true.
Maybe it's possible that, Israel over, we had in this chapter, they battled and, what was it last chapter? They battled and Israel won against Judah. So it's very possible that for a short period of time, maybe they would have,
Been
they
vassals?
won the battle. They killed they didn't really kill the king, did they? but maybe they would have, the king would have paid tribute or something for a few years or something.
I mean, what we do know from the archaeological record is that there were building campaigns in the north early on, like pre Assyrian invasion, and then afterwards, all those building campaigns start in the south, in Judah. So there wasn't a united monarchy. It looks like people moved from the north to the south. When the Assyrian invasion happened, and then because the two groups were now living together, they made up this story about how they were once united.
I mean, that does sound right. It's very what are you gonna do?
I mean, the kings having similar names could be them mixing up the two different people. Like maybe there was only the kings of Israel that go back, and then the kings of Judah list was like, let's just take some names from the king of Israel's list. But it could also mean that they had some sort of cultural interchange early on as well.
Well, I mean, yeah, they were definitely
especially since they're Yahwistic
related
names.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
the idea of a united monarchy under David, no.
Yeah.
I think we should continue, or
would you like me to read a second chapter?
Chapter 16?
Or chapter
15.
15, yeah.
15.
I suppose I can read 15.
Okay.
So there are a few sections to this. Is there a particular place you want me to stop?
Yeah, 22.
22. Okay. In the 27th year of King Jeroboam of Israel, King Azariah, son of Amaziah of Judah, began to reign. He was 16 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 52 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Yekaliah of Jerusalem. He did what was right in the sight of the Lord, just as his father Amaziah had done. Nevertheless, the high places were not taken away. The people still sacrificed and made offerings on the high places. The Lord struck the king so that he had a defiling skin disease to the day of his death and lived in a separate house. Jotham, the king's son, was in charge of the palace, governing the people of the land. Now, the rest of the acts of Azariah and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Judah? Azariah slept with his ancestors. They buried him with his ancestors in the city of David. His son Jotham succeeded him. In the 38th year of King Azariah of Judah, Zechariah, son of Jeroboam, reigned over Israel in Samaria 6 months. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, as his ancestors had done. He did not depart from the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, that he caused Israel to sin. Shallum, son of Yabesh, conspired against him and struck him down in Iblim, and killed him and reigned in his place. Now, the rest of the deeds of Zechariah are written in the book of the annals of the kings of Israel. This was the promise of the Lord that he gave to Jehu. Your sons shall sit on the throne of Israel to the 4th generation. And so it happened. Was there a quotation for this?
Yes, it is like in Kings. I think it's First Kings.
Wasn't it First
It's a
Kings?
quotation of that, yeah.
Okay.
Before you go on, we got a comment from the Game of Life. Lawrence, what is the real history of Judah and Israel? How did they become two people that were originally separate tribes? That sounds like a really quick answer.
You fucking asshole.
Well, we'll just devote the next 3 hours to just covering the bones of that, right?
You already answered this.
That's the idea of how they, I answered the idea of how they became one. Them being separate, that would have been, they were living right next to each other. They were part of this overall, Canaanite, ancient Near Eastern culture. So they weren't too separate, culturally speaking. They spoke the, very probably the same language. We have evidence of people speaking Aramaic very early on, and like that goes back to like the 8th 9th centuries, I think, probably maybe even older, I'm not sure. I can't remember off the top of my head. But they wouldn't have viewed much, like too much distinction between them, aside from them like living in different lands, having different practices and all that. And then they got much more separate with what I guess once it's hard because when you're trying to separate tribes at a certain point, like they didn't really make those distinctions all the time. Like they were closely related to the Moabites too. They share a lot of the same archaeological features, or archaeological, sorry, architectural features. So they weren't like super distinct, but it is clear that because of, like I mentioned before, because of the building campaigns, they had a totally different set of rulers. So there was that distinction between them until they all got together after the Assyrian invasion.
Yeah, it wasn't. Can I suggest it was kind of, in the early days, you've got a whole bunch of tribes. It's kind of a soup. They're warring with each other, very small raid things. David is pretty much a legendary figure. If anything, he was a small local warlord that was quite successful, and the legends build up around him. And then everyone claims to have some connection to David, real or imagined, later on. You start to see the distinction between North and South because the lands are very different, what they produce. There's more wealth, honestly, in the North, resources, trade routes, that kind of thing. The South is very mountainous, more withdrawn, not able to build the same level of stability. The gods are common, everything is culturally common, but you end up with sort of ruling groups sort of coming up out of the soup of, squabbling neighbor tribes. And then, they're constantly being ruled over by Egypt, Assyria, whoever's in charge in the local area, and squabbling and fighting with each other. And then, later on, they retcon the history after the exile and the people. But I mean, once Israel was taken over by Assyria, a lot of the Israelites ran as refugees to Judah and brought, the things they were used to with them. So it's pretty, it's I think Christianity tried to maintain the myth that there was something very special and sacred about the origin of this people and how they came together. But in reality, it's kind of the same muddled mess as the Gaelic tribes or the Celts or any other bunch of, tribes that were ruled each other and squabbled and fought and picked and, eventually sort of came up with somewhat distinct cultural history that all the same preserves the same argument between some little groups within it as, an old family feud.
Lawrence, you should continue, probably.
Yes, I should. Where the hell was I?
And that was
Verse
Second
13?
Kings. Sorry, it's Second. The reading was 2 Kings 10:30. That was a quotation from.
That's right. Yeah. So was I at verse 13? I think.
Yeah, 13. Yeah.
Yeah. Shallum, son of Yabesh, began to reign in the 39th year of King Uzziah of Judah. He reigned 1 month in Samaria. Then Menahem, son of Gadi, came up from Tirzah and came to Samaria. He struck down Shallum, son of Yabesh, in Samaria and killed him. He reigned in his place. Now the rest of the deeds of Shallum, including the conspiracy that he made, are written in the book of the annals of the kings of Israel. At that time, Menahem sacked Tifsa, all who were in it, and its territory from Tirzah on, because they did not open it to him. He sacked it. He ripped open all the pregnant women in it. Just gotta throw that one in there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
God does love him some dead babies.
It's not just no. I mean, it's basically just like condemning him because
Yeah, it's the condemnation of them.
Yeah, I guess it
it's
depends
seen
whose
as like a
wombs you're ripping open, right?
Yes, continue.
In the 39th
yeah, I just want to say
year,
quickly, just to people, if people are confused, Uzziah, and Azariah is the same guy.
Yes. We stated that already.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's way too many people with 6 different variations of their name in the same story. It's very confusing.
Yeah, exactly. We have like so we have Azariah of Judah in verse 17, but then right in in verse 13, right? Shalom becomes king during the 39th year of King Uzziah. So yeah, it's the same guy. It's just different sources, maybe.
I'd like to read the annals of the kings with this story, because that sounds a lot more interesting. Assassination, plots. I mean, come on, what happened to the good old days in Judges when you'd like stab a guy and this knife would disappear inside him and you did it left-handed and
all the shit came out of him.
And
I
he would escape out the window. You know, this is good stories.
Yeah, all the sexy stuff.
Yeah, I don't envy the guy who digs up the annals of the kings of Judah. I mean, the
In the 39th year of King Azariah of Judah, Menahem, son of Gadi, began to reign over Israel. He reigned 10 years in Samaria. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. He did not depart all his days from any of the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, that he caused Israel to sin. King Pul of Assyria came against the land. Menahem gave Pul 1,000 talents of silver so that he might help him confirm his hold on the royal power. Menahem exacted the silver from Israel, that is, from all the wealthy, 50 shekels of silver from each one, to give to the king of Assyria. So the king of Assyria turned back and did not stay there in the land. Now the rest of the deeds of Menahem and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Israel? Menahem slept with his ancestors, and his son Pekahiah succeeded him. That was verse 22. But as you can see, Assyria is approaching.
Pul
is dun.
The Pul of Assyria is identified with Tiglath-Pileser,
the third,
and we have inscriptions that say that Menachem, the king of Israel or king of Samaria, I think it says. Let me see. Menachem paid Tiglath-Pileser a tribute.
This is a super common practice, by the way, paying
which
tribute
is an actual
to be
event
in
the Bible.
Right, yeah.
Here we go.
We got a comment from Pavlos Lozovskis, who says 90% of questions will be answered by Lawrence having or working on a video for it, and the rest will end up with old movie references.
I have made a lot of fucking videos.
Do not insult the good name of movie references. But it's
insult Lawrence instead.
Yeah, insult me. Do it. You won't, coward.
I love you, Lawrence.
Is that a challenge, Lawrence?
These things are complicated. And where do you draw the line in discussion? I mean, we're not teaching a course at a university level here, and there's a certain amount of knowledge that we can't really be certain where everyone is, and it's hard to make it both accessible and yet sufficiently in depth to not be dishonest. It's a tricky balance. I don't know. I do my best.
Also, Peter, if you could, just drop the best insults in the private chat here, the funniest ones.
Oh yeah, are we insulting Lawrence? I'm gonna watch.
Yes, we are.
I just did. I just did. Check.
I'm not gonna. I don't want to check the comment section.
This morning, somebody on social media, on Facebook, I think it was, challenged me on a whole bunch of different beginner questions, like your first time evangelical, going to go out there. You've met your first atheist, right? And so you bring up all these things you've been trained to say, and I answered all of them with videos I had previously done on exactly that claim.
Yeah.
Join Tomir's Discord server.
You piece of shit.
As
Also, Peter, there is a really annoying troll that just keeps trolling the same nonsense, and they're dodging around you know the one. Will you please shut him up? He's starting to take it into another cesspool, and there's been enough cesspools. He's been followed.
Why can't like
officially he hasn't violated a rule that Aaron has set for the chat. I'm waiting for that, and then
fair enough.
I'll help him out.
Yeah. Also, one more thing about Tiglath-Pileser. I mean, he's someone that we have lots of inscriptions. I think even he himself wrote stuff. Oh, like inscriptions that say "I Tiglath-Pileser" or whatever, right? He's pretty prolific in archaeology. There is one inscription that mentions that he exiled people from Israel. Like he conquered cities and took the people and brought them back. So that's like the first time he would have been the one who introduced, I guess, the concept of like invading Israel and taking back captives with him to Assyria and stuff. So it could have been that the Israelites living in
the Assyrians were a markedly brutal invader. They were really, and not just in the Bible, other records also make it clear that they were not nice. So I'm sure many people paid them tribute to not dabbing them.
Yeah.
Somebody in the chat is asking for Lawrence's channel.
Well, you know what? Once upon a time, it used to be in the description, but it's Milwaukee Atheists.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic. He has all kinds of stuff on the Apocrypha too, which we will never have time to finish in this series. Oh my God.
No,
but
he named the channel. He named his channel after Thomas' Discord.
Exactly.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll start with verse 1 about Azariah. He's also called Uzziah in verses 30, 32, and 34, and 2 Chronicles 26 and 27, as well as in Amos 1:1, Hosea 1:1, Isaiah 1:1, 6:1, and 7:1. Although Fritz writes that the Uzziah form is the name that the king took on only when he succeeded to the throne, others like Sweeney, McKenzie, and Cogan take the two names to be variants, with the latter writing that the variation comes from the semantic closeness with the root Ein Zain Resh and Ein Vav Zain. He notes that the name Uzziah appears in two Hebrew seals from the middle 8th century, whose origin is unknown. He writes that the seals probably belonged to Uzziah's courtiers. There is a mention of Azariah in inscriptions of Tiglath-Pileser III, who was the head of a rebellion against Assyria in central Syria. While early scholars like Tadmor identified him with King Uzziah, modern research rejects this identification as unfounded. And Hens-Piazza comments, quote, succeeding his father Amaziah to the throne, Azariah's reign was coterminous with another great ruler, Jeroboam II, in the north. Azariah's mother was Yekoliah, and he ascended the throne at the young age of 16. In the second segment of this period...
hold on, was that word contemporaneous?
No, coterminous.
Coterminous. Okay.
Coterminous.
Okay.
Coterminous.
It's they ended at the same time.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Same terminus end.
Sorry. In the second segment of this report, in verses 3 and 4, the familiar theological assessment renders Azariah like many of the southern kings. Though he is not compared to David, he is assessed as doing what was pleasing in the sight of the Lord in 14:3. Still, like other Judite rulers, he allows shrines in the high places to remain. That the people continued to frequent these sites qualifies his otherwise positive appraisal.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's also like so Uzziah or Azariah's reign crosses over 760 BCE, which I think we know that there was quite a major earthquake in the region at the time, but I don't think the Bible mentions anything about it.
That's amazing. Why wouldn't they use that for something? I mean,
Well, I'm saying the people that wrote about it wouldn't have known about it, I guess.
Oh, fair. Yeah, it didn't survive in the records because,
yeah.
Sometimes these things don't. It's always very convenient for the prophets, though, when something dramatic happens, because they can always spin it that, it's because they're not getting enough tithes.
Yeah.
Let's see if there's anything about the earthquake.
Yeah.
Sorry.
On verse 5, the Lord afflicted the king with leprosy. 2 Kings 26, 16 through 20 explains that Uzziah was struck by leprosy because he entered the temple of Yahweh to offer incense on the incense altar, which is forbidden. Although he was warned by the priest, he refused to leave and continue this act when suddenly, quote, leprosy broke out on his forehead, end quote, in verse 19 there. A later tradition connects Uzziah's leprosy with the earthquake during his times, according to Amos 1:1 and Zechariah 14:5. Thus, Josephus in Antiquities 9:2-5 writes, quote, a great earthquake shook the earth, and the sanctuary was split open. A dazzling ray of sunlight shone through and fell on the face of the king, with the result that leprosy immediately appeared upon him, end quote. From the context...
That's where Matthew got it. Sorry, oh no, it was Luke. It was Luke, of course. Luke was the one.
Yeah, sorry, I should have said that.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, I should have said that the earthquake isn't mentioned here in the story about him, even though the leprosy is. But it is mentioned in, like, I think, is it Amos?
Yeah, Amos 1:1, Zechariah 14:5.
Zechariah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how it ended up in Josephus.
Yeah. Like, it's mentioned, like, oh, that earthquake. Or something like that.
Yeah, was the marker of XYZ misfortune.
Mm-hmm. From the context, it seems that Yahweh afflicted Azariah because of the high places. Fritz writes that leprosy, tzara'at, is the generic term for a variety of skin diseases, which renders one as impure, and thus incapable of participating in cultic activity, and subsequently to be isolated. Yeah. On that same verse, a separate house. In Hebrew, Bet HaChofshit. Septuagint reads, a house apophostoth. Because in Greek is it's the original, right? Because
Septuagint is the original,
Yeah, because it has a million words and much more varied than Hebrew, which only has
the best words.
Yeah.
So many words. Always the most words are the most authentic.
Yeah.
Do you have the Greek text on you for it?
I can check on McKenzie real quick, but
I can check the
translation.
What verse?
Verse 5.
Verse 5. Okay.
Wait, what's the Hebrew word?
Chofshit. Yeah, I don't understand how they've got into. No, it's not.
Well, yeah, I mean, JPS translates it as isolated, but it kind of means like alone, right?
I get to that. I'll
get to that. In the house
house.
Yeah. Okay. So in the house, Afusoth.
Yeah, Afusoth. That's that.
There are two fives in there.
Yeah.
Oh.
Afustoth, I guess.
Mean, it doesn't sound like Chafshit.
Afusoth,
yeah. Okay, so
oh wait, they would have made the determinative ha into a, which makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, so the word chofshit is found only here and in 2 Chronicles 26:21, and is from the root chet page shin, to be free or separate. Thus, Vulgate reads a free house. Traditionals like Kimchi and Gersonides explain that the king was free from his work while being in that house. Rashi and Kara, based on Talmud Kelaim 9.3, Talmud Yerushalmi Kelaim 9.3, wrote that he made a house in the graveyard based on Psalms 88:6, I am free among the dead, in Hebrew, Bametim Chofshi. Yeah.
Oh God, that just sounds like someone who needs to retire.
Just a man cave.
I'll be free among the dead.
Ah!
Yeah.
He had like a man cave in the middle of the desert, in the middle of the graveyard.
Yeah. Yeah. Wait one second. Targum reads outside of Jerusalem. Dre explains that the Targumist ensures that Azariah adheres to the law of purification by defining clearly the location of his dwelling. By doing so, the sanctity of Jerusalem is safeguarded. She suggests that this rendering was also known to Josephus, who writes in Antiquities 9:2-7, he continued for a certain time outside the city, living the life of a private citizen. Cogan notes that in the phrase Bet HaChofshit is also attested in Ugaritic, Bet Chaptat, I guess, as indicating the underworld, i.e. the house of the dead. He notes that Kasuto explained that the leper was considered dead. And Peshitta reads, he lived hidden in the house.
I mean, did you say something about in Chronicles it says that the reason he was given leprosy was because he tried to bring incense?
Yes, I've noted that already. Yeah.
Sorry, you know me. My hearing is a bit selective.
Yeah, we'll talk that in counseling.
Mostly, if it's you speaking, I just don't hear anything.
Of course you don't.
Honey, guys, this is for the couples counselor. Mm-hmm. I know you were working on better communication, but remember, is it kind is the first question.
I think funny should come first.
Funny?
If it's funny, then it's okay. It doesn't have to be kind.
It can be kind to give an intelligent insult if you love each other.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mother.
Okay. Thank you, Mistress. So on your thumb...
Sorry, I said it wrong.
Yeah, of course.
Matt, how embarrassing would that be if you called your mistress Mummy?
I mean,
I did that in school.
That is literally a thing.
I mean, that's a thing, Isaac.
Oh.
That's a thing.
Are you seriously telling me you don't know what a daddy kink is, or you just assumed there was no?
No, I'm saying like if you had a relationship with a mistress and you were supposed to call a mistress or goddess, and then
I'm supposed to be the innocent one.
Like
okay,
like in school, when you accidentally call your teacher Mummy, it's very embarrassing.
That's a lot different.
I know. God, I don't know when you went to school, honey.
Yeah, moving on. Moving on. On your thumb. English education, am I right? So on your thumb, he was in charge of the palace, in Hebrew Habayit. Fritz writes that this office made Yotham responsible for all the affairs of the royal palace, and especially the administration of the royal estate, as we see in 1 Kings 4:6. Thus, members of the royal family could take on high officers. He writes, quote, the regency of Yotham can preserve power and the Davidic dynasty in the exceptional case where the king is himself unable to rule. In this way, both cultic and political demands can be fulfilled.
Yeah, I think it's trying to say like he was not only ruling instead of his father, but he also took over looking after the sort of like more intimate family affairs, not necessarily like the inside of the house, like the harem, but like the king would have been involved in like the family disputes and stuff like that. So it seems that he literally took over both the royal part, but also the like leader of the family part, like ruling the house and the people.
And I mean, these in this chapter so far, it's been very Game of Thronesy too.
Oh, on the Israel side, yeah.
Slightly less incest, which is unusual for the Bible because there's usually lots of incest.
Well, you can't exactly practice incest if you're like if your family only lasts one generation on the throne.
You can still practice it. You just can't get to the level of those horrible Habsburg abominations.
Yeah, I wanted to just say that. Yeah.
Right, you can practice it. You won't ever get good at it like the Habsburg.
Get good at it. Have you ever played Crusader Kings? You will be wrong.
God.
You will be proven wrong. God. Yeah. Okay. On verse 10, he attacked him in front of the people. Hebrew for in front of the people is keval am. It's Kavol am, I will say that. Cogan, however, writes that the use of the Aramaic kaval or kavol before in a Hebrew phrase is unexpected and requires amending the word people, to ha'am, the people. The Lucianic recension, kavol, I did a bibliography myself. I misread. Sorry, I skipped 2 verses. So I'll restart. Hebrew for in front of the people is kavol am, which is a hapax. Early translations and traditionals render in front of the people. Cogan, however, writes that the use of the Aramaic kaval before in a Hebrew phrase is unexpected and requires amending the word am, which means people, to ha'am, the people. Lucianic recension reads Ibleam, the same location where Yehu killed Achaziah in 927. While this reading is favored by most
it was
commentators.
The original.
Yeah.
See, the Septuagint had the original reading, and then the Hebrew.
That's not a Septuagint, though. It's not the Septuagint.
It's not Septuagint. Oh,
it's
yeah,
the
you're
Lucianic
right.
recension.
It's a Masoretic script, which is it's a Masoretic, right?
No, it's like a recension by Lucian of everything, I guess.
But is it not true that there are other Masoretic manuscripts that say Ibleam as well?
I don't think there are. I think it's only in the Lucianic recension. Though, are you taking that from JPS or?
Yeah.
Let me check real quick. No. Okay. So it's the Lucianic
just
recension.
Lucianic recension that says that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess I can check on like another source that I have, but I'll get to that.
It's fine.
Yeah. Okay, so while this reading is favored by most commentators, Sweeney and Hens-Piazza retained the reading in public, with the latter writing that the public nature of his demise, quote, suggests not only groundswell support for his ousting, but also serves as visible evidence that God's word concerning the Yehu dynasty has been fulfilled, end quote. And McKenzie comments, quote, the reason for Shallum's conspiracy is undisclosed, but the brevity of Zechariah's reign suggests that it may have been due to dissatisfaction with his father's policies, which he had continued. Scholars frequently surmise that the pro-Assyrian stance of the dynasty, dating back to Yehu himself, was unpopular. This is combined with the suggestion that Shallum was from Gilead, and therefore represented Transjordanian opposition to Assyria and the Jehuites, perhaps even with the support of Damascus. The evidence is largely circumstantial, though the theory does fit with clues about the origins and shifting policies vis-a-vis Assyria that can be discerned from the usurpers described in this chapter. If the theory is correct, Shallum's overthrow of Zechariah was intended to bring an end to Israel's affiliation with Assyria that had been forged and maintained by the house of Yehu. On verse 12, this verse is a reference to Yahweh's promise to Yehu that he would see his sons on the throne to the 4th generation, as we see in turn 30. McKenzie writes that the verse stands between the closing formula for Zechariah and the opening of the account of Shallum, i.e. outside of DH's structural framework in Kings. Also, the expression Vayehi ken, and it came about, is priestly and is limited to Genesis 1, except for Judges 6:38, 2 Kings 7:20, and this verse. Therefore,
and it came about.
And
do you mean,
yeah.
And it came to pass?
No, I don't think it is, because it's Vayehi ken, right?
No, I'm
I
pretty
don't
sure
know.
Then it came to pass.
Vayehi.
Yeah, I think it's that in Genesis it's that is translated as
okay.
and it came to pass, right?
Okay.
And God saw that it what was it? Let there be lights, and it came to pass, and something like that.
I guess, yes. So yeah,
and it was so is another way of saying it. Yeah.
Therefore, this is, quote, probably a pedantic fulfillment notice, much like 720, end quote.
What we call those pedantic authors. What are they called? Interpolators. What's the other words you call them? Redactors.
Liars.
Yeah.
The pedantic redactors. There's your new band name, by the way.
Who's your pretty boa? Who's your pretty boa? The chat asked for a boa.
You are muted, Aaron. You're muted.
Yeah, someone said something about boas, and I misread it as booze.
Yeah. Somebody asked to see one of my boas, so she happened to be close by, so I pull her out. I'm probably going to take my big boa out to the park this afternoon.
Who's a good girl?
Yeah.
This
tiny little thing will eventually be like 8 or 9 feet long, but it's going to take her forever to grow.
What is that in actual units?
That'd be 3 meters.
Okay, yeah, I see.
In actual units.
Yeah.
On that, I actually agree with you, Tomer.
Yeah, it's a bit offensive to measure a snake in feet, I think. Same with horses, right? How high is a horse? 18 hands. Like,
yep.
Oh,
really?
The dad jokes.
Sorry. I have 27 nieces and nephews. It's bleeding into me.
So on verse 14, Menachem, son of Gadi, we find references to Menachem in extra biblical sources. Cogan notes that in Assyrian sources from the days of Tiglath-Pileser III, he is called Menachem the Samarian. He is described as the king of Israel, who was among the western kings who raised taxes to the king of Assyria. He also suggested that Menachem was from the tribe of Gad, but this is rejected by McKenzie, who writes that Gadi is a short form of Gadiel or Gadiyahu, Yahweh is my fortune. Now in verse 16, Tifsach, Hebrew Tifsach. Kimchi notes that Tifsach is not in Israel, but rather beyond the Euphrates, in Aram. As seen in 1 Kings 5:4, he controlled the whole region west of the Euphrates from Tifsach to Gaza. He suggested that Tifsach was on the border close to Tirzah, which was in Israel. Modern commentators also identify Tifsach with Thapsacus, located on the Euphrates River in northern Syria, but note that it is too far a distance from Israel. Instead, many followed the Lucianic recension reading of Tapuach, a city on the border of Ephraim and Manasseh, seen in Joshua 16:8 and 17:7 and 8, which is generally identified as Tel Sheikh Abu Zarad, some 12 kilometers west of Nablus. And I should note that I remember this exact thing because that was actually in my in my high school test, the Bagrut, the final exams. It's this exact same Tifsach Tapuach thing appeared there. So.
Oh really?
Yeah.
It's like it seems like the secular biblical tests like to focus on the bits that we ignored.
Yeah,
it makes sense.
It depends. I mean, we read Ecclesiastes. That was part of it, so it was
exactly. Right.
How much more commentary do you have on this part, Lauren? Or
20.
Yes. Tapuach
on this part.
Sorry.
Well,
I
still have to read the second half, but he's still going through the.
Yeah, I'm lying. By the way, it's I have eight pages.
Still to go.
It's a good time to mention these other comments.
Yeah, you should do that.
Okay,
go ahead.
My unfinished journey offers $6.66. It says, "Hail Nero, Aaron, and Lawrence, the pretentious buffoon."
I've seen better insults.
The game of life. Who is the guy in the background of these videos? He sounds like Buraz from Aaron's Quran series. Are you talking about?
I take that as a compliment. I take that as a compliment.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't see how Peter sounds like Buraz, but anyway, he says, also, Aaron, what is the reason most of your Quran videos are privated? There were some people who were in the Quran series who, there was one or two that were believing Muslims at the time. And that participating in that series was not helpful to their faith.
Oh.
Yeah.
I see.
What a big surprise. And so there's been a couple people who have, for different reasons, reached out to me and said, look, I was on this show and I can't let my parents know, or my position is entirely changed, whatever. I'm apostate now, whatever. It was different things. For I think 3 different people had told me that they can't be recorded like this. They're not comfortable with it anymore. So I had to, per their request, I privatized those videos.
I think we'd like to imagine that we look at everything with logic, and I try to do my best, but I've learned there's a couple of other rules of thumb that you need to use to judge. And one of the ways to judge an idea, its value and its substance, is how it responds to criticism. People from many religious backgrounds have to be very careful about what they say, and depending where they are in the world and who holds the power. I think that's an indication that we do not have, that we're quite right to criticize these ideas, because truly valuable, substantial ideas, things that are based in reality, they don't need to threaten like that. You might be laughed at if you are a fool.
Most of the people that were on that panel were calling in from Muslim-dominant countries.
Yeah. And to fear the reprisals of that is very reasonable.
Yeah. Okay, then one more comment. Indeed, this is the person's name, I guess, is Indeed. Aaron, can you give a quick summary of your general thoughts on the teachings of Jesus? When there is a chance, of course. The teachings of Jesus. Let's see. Don't wash your hands because pathogens aren't a thing. Magic words are what causes diseases. Or diseases are actually caused by demons, and so I'm going to cast them into pigs and kill these innocent pigs because of my magic imaginary nonsense. And if you just deny reality and make believe really, really hard, then you can make an alternative reality come out of pure imagination. So just make believe really hard. If you believe hard enough, it'll become real. And when I die, I won't really die, and I'll see you again before before all of you are dead. You will all see, some of you standing here will see me coming back at the right hand of power, coming in the clouds, and it'll be very soon. This generation will not pass away. Damn Skippy will not be thousands of years from now. It'll be very soon, while some of you are still alive. Yeah, that's a summary of Jesus's teachings. Oh, and I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. I'm going to come to divide parents from their children and husbands from their wives, all for some of them who love the cult that I'm pushing, and for others who try to reason with the people who are now in my cult, because what a cult does is separate families in exactly that way. It's another part of Jesus's teachings. Oh, that and the world is flat. There's my summary.
I mean, the last one wouldn't have been Jesus's, but
oh yeah, well, the story of Daniel, where story in Daniel where he goes up to, what was it, a tall mountain?
Yeah. That's Daniel. Yeah.
No, so but the same thing happens over all the Jesus kingdoms and the temptation.
And then Jesus says that he hopes he doesn't return in the winter time. Sorry.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah.
He apparently threw in somewhere in there that you shouldn't be a raging asshole, and that to be rich is evil.
Oh yeah, and
nice.
I forgot to mention that if you ever get divorced, your first divorce will be your last marriage.
Oh God, do I have to get married again to do more blasphemy? I do not want to plan an event like that. You know how much work I don't wanna.
Yeah.
And yet you have one more, even though I disagree with that one. I still posted it.
Okay, my unfinished sock. Don't insult Lawrence. Like and share the stream instead.
I'll see. I don't like the first half of
that.
Lawrence likes to be insulted.
Yeah, damn straight. Do it.
Yeah. Come to this Discord and do it. Do it to his face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go fuck yourself, Lawrence.
I posted a link to Tomer's Discord server.
Yeah,
Right,
thank you.
go fuck yourself.
So, okay, so verse 16, still on verse, ripped open all the pregnant women. McKenzie comments, Menachem attacks the city of Tapuach on the Ephraim-Manasseh border, killing its citizens and ripping open its pregnant women. The reason for the attack is that the city's residents did not open, i.e. refused to surrender or submit to him, also Deuteronomy 20:11. His vicious reprisal was intended to make an example of Tapuach in order to forestall defiance by others. There's a footnote. Gray, followed by Fricke, argued that Menachem's motive was to annihilate the line of Shalom, whose hometown of Yasib was near Tapuach, according to Septuagint on Joshua 17:7. The date portends the brutality of Menachem's reign, though no other details to this effect are forthcoming. On the other hand, it may help to account for Menachem's relative longevity as king compared to his immediate predecessors.
Yeah, being willing to pay someone to not tear down your city and kill everyone you know and love is sometimes a good recipe for longevity.
Should I continue the chapter?
No, I have more.
Ah.
Yeah, sorry. On verse 9, on verse 19, Pul, king of Assyria. This is Tiglath-Pileser III, who is also called Pul or Pulu in a Babylonian king list. Cogan notes that in Ptolemy's Canon of Kings, he is called Polos. He writes that Pul is a well-known Assyrian name, meaning limestone. Fritz, however, writes that the use of the shorter alternative is anachronistic, and it was adopted as the name of the Assyrian king only after the assumption of the Babylonian monarchy in 729. And finally, on verse 20, Fritz comments, the amount of the tribute which is given as 1,000 talents is redistributed to the individual households, which have to contribute 50 shekels each. With 1 talent made up of 3,600 shekels, compare Exodus 21:32, we can calculate that there were 72,000 families in Israel. If we assume a standard family of 4, the population amounts to 288,000 people overall. This tribute was apparently raised independently of land ownership and hence income of the families. Undoubtedly, this meant for the majority a serious financial strain beyond the usual taxation. The opposition to Ashur, which emerges more clearly during the last decades of the monarchy in Israel, has some of its roots certainly in the tax burden that Ashur had caused.
You mean if you overtax the starving poor with no resources, they might not like you?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah, that's it for this part.
But you can patch it up with them by giving them cake.
Or brioche. Brioche.
I think I'll continue.
Yes, please.
Verse 23. In the 15th year of King Azariah of Judah, Pekahiah, son of Menahem, began to reign over Israel and Samaria. He reigned 2 years. It's a lot longer than that month. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. He did not turn away from the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, that he caused Israel to sin. Pekah, son of Remaliah, his captain, conspired against him with 50 of the Gileadites and attacked him in Samaria, in the citadel of the palace, along with Argob and Ariah. He killed him, and he reigned in place of him. Now the rest of the deeds of Pekahiah and all that he did are written in the book of the annals of the kings of Israel. Still with this whole Game of Thrones thing, a lot of conspiracies, very unstable. In the 52nd year of King Azariah of Judah, Pekah, son of Remaliah, began to reign over Israel and Samaria. He reigned 20 years. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. He did not depart from the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, that he caused Israel to sin. In the days of King Pekah of Israel, King Tiglath-Pileser of Assyria came and captured Iyon, Abel Beth Makkah, Yanoah, Kadesh, Hazor, Gilead, and Galilee, all the land of Naphtali, and he carried the people captive to Assyria. Then Hoshea, son of Elah, made a conspiracy against Pekah, son of Remaliah, attacked him and killed him. He reigned in place of him in the 20th year of Jotham, son of Uzziah. Now the rest of the acts of Pekah and all that he did are written in the book of the annals of the kings of Israel. In the second year of King Pekah, son of Remaliah, King Jotham, son of Uzziah of Judah, began to reign. He was 25 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 16 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Yerusha, daughter of Zadok, which was a very famous priestly family. He did what was right in the sight of the Lord, just as his father Uzziah had done. Nevertheless, the high places were not removed, and the people still sacrificed and made offerings on the high places. He built the upper gate of the house of the Lord. Now the rest of the acts of Jotham and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Judah? In those days the Lord began to send King Rezin of Aram and Pekah son of Remaliah against Judah. Jotham slept with his ancestors and was buried with his ancestors in the city of David, his ancestor. His son Ahaz succeeded him. So at least on Jotham there, comes from a priestly line, which I'm guessing is why there's the inclusion of him building. It says the upper gate of the house of the Lord, but yeah, he's just adding to the temple, which was I don't think that was a super common thing. So I would think that his priestly lineage would have something to do with that. And then the King Rezin of Aram, I remember us talking about this not that long ago. Maybe it was on the show, maybe it was in the Discord.
I don't think we mentioned him on this show because like I think this is the first time he appears here. Maybe we did.
We're probably talking about on the Discord then. Yeah.
Somebody in the chat says maybe we should be reading the book of the annals or whatever instead of,
that'd be great if it existed.
Since everything is apparently written there.
Yeah, it'd be great if it was still around.
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
don't worry,
we
get
a
to
time
Chronicles
machine and we'll read it.
Oh my god.
Yes.
So Jotham, as well as his son Ahaz, are both mentioned. I think also in Assyrian, in the annals of Tiglath-Pileser, and also Pekah is mentioned.
Yeah, and Rezin as well. Yeah. They're all mentioned there.
Yeah, a tributary to Tiglath-Pileser, the last king of Aram Damascus.
Yeah.
The Bible says that he was put to death by Tiglath-Pileser, but that's not. There's no extra biblical evidence of that.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll start with 25, Argob and Aryeh. The meaning of this phrase is uncertain. Some traditionals took the names to be people's names, either co-conspirators, according to Kimchi, Gersonis, and Abravanel, or those who were servants to Pekahiah that were killed by Pekach, according to Botseko. However, since there is a definite article before Aryeh, this seems unlikely. Rashi and Kara have taken Argov to be an expression of important palaces, and the Aryeh was a golden lion that was standing in those palaces. Several modern commentators take Argov and Aryeh to be place names, and also Vulgate. Cogan writes that Argob is a district in Gilead, as we see in Deuteronomy 3:4, and perhaps indicates the origin of the warriors. Thus, some, like Bernie and Montgomery and Geman, suggested amending Ha'aryeh to Yair, i.e. Chavat Yair, at the Manasseh district in Gilead, seen in Numbers 32:41 and 1 Kings 4:13. McKenzie suggests that this is a misplaced gloss to Gilead in verse 29, and the misplacement occurred because of the reference to Gilead here in verse 25. Sweeney, however, writes that the reasons that they would be placed in their present location are lacking. He writes that the terms mean eagle and the lion, which would refer to two guardian figures that stand at the entrance to the royal palace. On verse 27, he reigned 20 years. Modern commentators take the duration of Pekach's reign to be far too long. As Sweeney writes, quote, Assyrian records indicate that Menachem paid tribute to Assyria in 738 BCE, and Hoshea surrendered to Tiglath-Pileser III in 732 BCE. The timing of Pekach's assassination of Pekachiah and seizure of the throne indicates that it took place about the time of Azariah's death. End quote. Several proposals have been suggested to explain the discrepancy. 1. The number 20 is a scribal error, a view adopted by Albright and Barnes. Cogan dismisses this proposal since the number 20 appears in synchronisms in verse 32 and 16:1. But McKenzie writes that this view cannot be dismissed in view of the evidence for textual and chronological variation in Kings, and especially in this chapter. He notes that some propose that the original number was 10, according to Gray and Rem, or 4, with the 16 years added to accommodate the 16 years attributed to Jotham of Judah, after it was forgotten that Jotham's years were incorporated with his father's, according to Henschel. 2. The number of years is genuine and includes the years spent by Pekach as the ruler of a rival kingdom in Transjordan, beginning with the ascension of Menachem, if not the end of Jeroboam II's reign. 3. Pekach considered himself the legitimate heir of the Yehud dynasty, and therefore counted his regnal years from the end of Zechariah's, or Jeroboam II's reign, ignoring the reigns of Menachem and Pekachiah, according to W.J. Chapman. And 4, an early chronographer who considered Menachem and Pekachiah usurpers, counted back from the beginning of Pekach's reign to the end of the Yehud dynasty, and attributed the intervening years to Pekach. He concludes, quote, The reason for the attribution of 20 years to Pekach's reign remains obscure. Fortunately, it does not seriously affect the overall chronology, since it is clear from external evidence that Pekach's reign in Samaria was limited to the period from 738 to 731 or 30.
So what I'm getting is that if we were to take out some graph paper and try and chart all of this, it would be a clusterfuck and nothing would make sense.
Yeah. I guess.
Okay. All right. Good. Okay. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
Brilliant summary of scripture there.
On 29, Fritz notes that Tiglath-Pileser III undertook 3 campaigns against the southern Levant between 734 through 732. 1 against Philistine in 734, and 2 against Damascus, quote-unquote, in 733 and 732. It is unclear as to what campaign verse 29 refers to. The report of the 733 campaign mentions the cities of Hinatuna, biblical Hanathon, Aruma, biblical Ruma, appearing in 23:36, and Marum, also Merom, appearing in Joshua 11, verses 5 and 7, with some restoring Yatbite with Yotba in 21:19. He takes the campaign referred in verse 29 to be that of 733, which is against Damascus. On verse 30, according to summary inscription 4 of Tiglath-Pileser III, Pekach was killed by Tiglath-Pileser, who installed Hoshea. Fritz writes that it is likely that Tiglath-Pileser made Hoshea the new king of the remainder of Israel as part of the 733 campaign, in order to ensure a pro-Assyrian stance of the new vassal state. McKenzie, however, writes that the two claims are not mutually exclusive. Quote, The internal coup d'etat may have saved Tiglath-Pileser the trouble of conquest and prolonged Israel's payment of tribute. Hoshea's leadership of the revolt made him the natural candidate to succeed Pekach, so long as he swore loyalty to Assyria and made his tribute payments. End quote. On verse 33, he reigned in Jerusalem 16 years. From verse 30, it seems that Jotham ruled for at least 20 years. Rashi and Kara, based on Seder Olam Rabbah 22, wrote that since Achaz was evil, Scripture wanted to count the years with reference to Jotham, who was in the grave, rather than to Achaz, who was alive. Sweeney notes that some maintain that Jotham ruled for a period as co-regent, since his father suffered from leprosy. McKenzie takes verse 30b to be a later addition, since it is absent from the Lucianic recension, and is not a regular feature of the conspiracy notice represented in verse 30a. He takes the addition as a secondary calculation based on verses 27 and 32, where Pekach becomes king in the same year as Jotham, though slightly before him.
I have never seen a contortionist or a yoga position or anything so twisted and convoluted as the logic of the religious trying to make sense of their own fucking texts. Also, we have a very nice comment we should read.
Okay. So Tristan MB offers $5 and says, "I'm so glad I found you and at Mindshift. My mind is finally healing. I want to thank you. Thank you kindly. You're welcome." And Tammy B says, "I love this panel. Happy Sunday morning from Australia. Thank you all that make it possible, and lovelies in chat."
We need more hatred in these comments.
Oh, God.
Stop.
We need to bring down the mood a little.
You're bringing your degradation fetish in here.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what I accuse trolls of all the time.
Okay, so on that same verse, Yehusha, daughter of Tzadok. Several commentators like Hens-Piazza and Sweeney take the reference to Tzadok as indicating that Yehusha was a daughter of a priest. Thus, Yotam was part of a priestly circle, if not a priestly family. Likewise, McKenzie writes that Yehusha's designation suggests that she was from a priestly family, which might account for the memory of Yotham's building of the upper gate of the temple in verse 35, much as Yoash, who was raised by priests, was remembered for his repair of the temple. This, however, is rejected by Cogan.
It does seem there's a lot here buried if you just pay a little attention. There's a lot of cases where the priests are grabbing political power too, whether in this case by an actual, Zadok connection to the priest's family, or in the case of, just stealing away the child king, raising him in your cult, and then throwing out whoever was actually maintaining his regency as soon as you can. So, it's a move that's been pulled a couple times at this point.
Yeah. On verse 35, Jotham rebuilt the upper gate at the temple of the Lord. Sweeney writes that this gate may be identified with the upper Benjamin gate of the temple, where Pashu placed Jeremiah in stocks, in Jeremiah 22, and the temple gate that faces north, Ezekiel 9:2. Likewise, Fritz writes that the upper gate is, quote, another direct access to the temple area from the north, that is, from outside the city, end quote. Hens-Piazza writes that the note testifies less to his reputation as a builder, as we see in 2 Chronicles 27, 3 and 4, and more to his priestly background and his concern for the temple. And finally, on 37, Rezin, king of Aram. In Hebrew, Retzin. Cogan notes that Retzin appears as one of the western kings who surrendered to Tiglath-Pileser in 740, though it seems that in 735 he rebelled against Assyria together with other western kings, but was killed by him after Damascus's conquest. The name Retzin appears in Akkadian in two forms, Rachianu or Rakianu. In the Isaiah scroll, we find Ratzian in Isaiah 9:10. This led some, like McKenzie, to suggest that the original Aramean form of the name was Ratzian, meaning pleasant. Yeah, that's it.
Okay. All right, so we got a couple more comments to read here. Matthew Krobe says, hear me, let me see. Much love to everyone on this panel, except for you, Lawrence. Your mother was a hamster, and your father smelt of elderberries.
Yay!
Love you all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I fart in your general direction. Okay.
Yeah.
So I take it then we're going to save 16 for next week.
Yeah. Yeah, and I
we've
should
already
note
we've
that
already got to the 3-hour mark.
Yeah, and I should note that because Mackenzie's commentary ends on on 2 Kings 16, I had another commentary to use that I've used, which I'll later ask Aaron. I'll send him the updated bibliography. This is by Lisa M. Raybill, which another woman to the list. So yeah,
Raybill.
Yay!
Yeah.
See, I don't know. Tomer said that with some contempt.
She should change it to Razorbill. That'd be kind of awesome.
Yeah, Tomer did say that with some contempt. Do we need to
no, I
have a
didn't.
discussion?
I meant no. I meant that it's good that there is another like a female commentator. I think I'll say this: when we get to Ezra, I plan to have an all-female commentator list.
Very good.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Is it no Christians for this chapter?
No, it's a bit boring.
They weren't impressed by the.
Can you find Jesus
action.
in here somewhere? No, I really can't. All right, well then don't comment at all.
No, it's just like it's just two short comments by Ishodad and Ephraim. Yeah, I mean, Ishodad basically says that Uzziah arrogated priesthood. He dared arrogate priesthood without remembering what had happened to the people of Datan and Korach. Yeah, but that doesn't. It's not Jesus. it's mostly like boring.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right then. Any closing comments?
Check out my Discord.
My Discord. The ruler of that Discord.
Yes, check out
And
the Milwaukee
obviously-
Atheist Discord.
Second Discord on the list.
All right, all right.
Yeah.
All right then. I guess that's it.
Yes.
Good night. Good news. Have a pleasant tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'm sad he waited until the show was over to say that.